morning, everybody.
Defending attacks from
I'm
Iran
going to leave some news up for you guys.
This is that
for now,
live
and
radar
I
map,
shall
Rockford, that you
return
were referencing
as
there,
we get closer to
within
market
that last
opening.
answer. So you're saying that
If you're
here
noticing
in the
any
red
glitches
is,
or
a
any
bunch of
blatting
ships
out of any of the
stuff,
sound or anything like that, I kind of just changed a little bit of my
Okay,
settings. So
thank
just
you
let
so
me know
much
in
for
the
providing
chat.
this context and perspective. It's
And,
kind of hard to see
yeah.
all the details because, you know, it's so zoomed out, but
I'll be
I
back.
really appreciate that. Okay, this brings me to my next point, though. Strategic petroleum reserves. Could they meaningfully offset some of these supply disruptions if this conflict does continue for a while?
Absolutely. So all major countries, the G7's meeting today to talk about this very issue. So all major economies have agreed to keep 90 days worth of strategic oil, and some have natural gas as well in storage, in order to be able to weather this exact kind of storm from a geopolitical perspective. So yeah, that's probably happening. I would
Testing.
suspect
I'll be
that's
back,
happening
guys.
in the next 24 hours. So there'll be a major release of all the strategic reserves of the largest economies in the world. That will by itself cause oil prices to drop in the short term. And because it's 90 days, I mean, I think I've been watching this very closely. I would be surprised if the Strait of Hormuz was still facing major risks from the Iranian Navy and just the Iranian forces, including their land-based forces, in 90 days. The Iranian Navy is essentially gone. I think they have one ship still in Sri Lanka, but that's it. But they still have some things they can do. They can diesel prices go down as well.
Well, Rockford, I love an optimistic outlook. And I just want to say thank you to my producer, Ryan, who was able to zoom in a little bit more on this map just so that we could see more clearly some of these shipments that are just standing there waiting to see what the next move is going to be. Rockford, let's take us back throughout history. What lessons from some earlier maritime disruptions could we look back on right now that would be able to offer some relevant guidance today?
Okay, I have two very recent examples. So of course what happened in the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb around Yemen with the Houthi attacks, that's one. Of course, there's also the infamous Ever Given blockage of the Suez Canal, and so there were alternatives. So those are most recent, but probably most relevant for the Gulf is the 1980s tanker war. And this occurred during the Iran-Iraq War, so shortly after the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The Iran-Iraq War started. It was a major conflict, and part of Iran's strategy actually rhymes with their strategy today. They started attacking not only Iraqi oil tankers, but also Kuwaiti and other sort of Gulf Cooperation Council country oil exports. And therefore, it's called the Tanker War. Marine insurance spiked then. The U.S. sent a lot of Navy assets there to start escorting tankers again. So that all rhymes. What happened then, which I think we might see happening this week, would be certain Gulf Cooperation Council countries reflag their tankers as U.S. tankers. Therefore, an attack on that tanker is an attack against the United States. Anytime a ship has a flag, that's the sovereignty over that ship. And we did this in the 80s, escorting Kuwaiti tankers out through the Strait of Hormuz, and the Iranians backed off. They had actually a lot more naval power at the time. So right now, I think that could happen again, and it would be another thing that would keep marine insurance prices low, keep the oil flowing, keep oil prices low, and therefore that ripples through the global markets to keep U.S. gasoline and diesel prices low as well.
Well, it's good to know that we have some other examples to look throughout just to, again, give us that relevant context and also guidance as to what could happen going forward. I know people like to plan, and the uncertainty is something that most people don't like to see, at least at this moment. You mentioned right off the top of this conversation, it's not just obviously oil that passes through the Strait of Hormuz. We have other goods, other services that have to get through there. So when we talk about the supply in general, what else could be impacted because of the constraints there at the Strait?
I love that you asked this question. So everyone's focused on the oil. They should be focused on the natural gas. So probably the most important strike that the Iranian military has done to the global economy is actually the strike against the Ras Laffan liquefied natural gas export port of Qatar. And Qatar and Iran share the world's largest natural gas field. Qatar is the largest exporter of natural gas in the world. Most of that natural gas goes to Pacific Asia, China, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, some to India, some to Europe. None of it comes to the United States because we actually also export liquefied natural gas. But that disruption is very important for the economies of China, Japan, South Korea, Singapore. The U.S. does have the capability to surge liquefied natural gas exports to those Pacific economies, so that may happen. So we shall see. Same for Europe. We could surge. The United States could surge liquefied natural gas exports to Europe as well. So we shall see. But that's a really important story, and I'm glad you raised it.
No, of course, and I appreciate, Rockford, that you have joined us here just to offer some more context on this entire situation. People are watching it closely for several days now. We are already over a week when we talk about how this conflict has continued to escalate. And I just want to bring us back one more time again to this. It's a live image, this live radar system there out of the Strait of Hormuz. So Rockford White's a professor of practice of maritime studies at the Fletcher School at Tufts University. Again, I really appreciate that you were able to join us here today. As we are following this very closely, oil prices, the price or the impact of the stock market, also everything having to do with the economy, people are watching closely. So Rockford, I look forward to checking in with you.
You're most welcome. Anytime. I'm watching it closely, too.
Of course. Thank you so much. You take care.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We are going to step away for a brief commercial break here at Live Now from Fox, but the topic continues to be the impacts on the escalating situation in the Middle East. Stay with us.
They're running the same pattern, and often it's very unconscious. And as a result of that, the performance doesn't change. And when they come up against the same brick wall, the same excuse, the same voice in their head shows up, and they're not able to flip the switch. And they know logically after the event, they go, "No, I did it again," but they don't know what the trigger is because they're not getting a reframe in terms of how they're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I know.
And this is The Close.
Every weekday from 3 to 5 Eastern.
Only.
But also some developments from back here at home. Why don't take us out to some live images that we have over in New York City, because that is where this next story takes us. Of course, a lot of protests erupting throughout several major cities across the U.S., but a pretty scary situation that happened just outside of the home of New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani. Joining us live now with the latest on this entire situation is Jessica Formoso with our team at Fox 5 in New York. Jessica, what can you tell us?
Good morning. So I can tell you this, the NYPD confirming that at least one of the devices that was ignited here during the protest on Saturday was a homemade bomb. Now we know a third device was found here yesterday inside a vehicle. And if you go ahead and look at this video here, you can see authorities out here for most of the day, including the bomb squad. This black.
Did you know that Zorro Mamdani's wife was busted liking images from the October attack on Jews? Remember that? Yeah, his wife has been liking lots of anti-Jew stuff. Imagine that. That's what you voted for, New York.
Cayumi. Their homes in Bucks County were searched. Police say they are accused of throwing and igniting two objects, one of which was confirmed to be a bomb. Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch says that improvised explosive device could have caused serious injuries or death. Now, all this unfolding on Saturday around 2:30 in the afternoon outside of Gracie Mansion. Two opposing demonstrations clashed and things turned violent quickly. According to police, the Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City protest was organized by far-right activist Jake Lang, but the event drew a far larger group of counter demonstrators, and the two groups clashing. That is when authorities say Balat lit the first device and threw it towards the protest area. It struck a barrier, and you can see there the smoke landing just feet from police officers. He then is accused of grabbing a second device from that second suspect, lighting it and dropping it. No one was injured, but police arresting the two right here on scene. They have not been charged yet, but will most likely face serious federal charges. Now, according to reports, one of the suspects told investigators that they sympathized with ISIS videos that they've been watching online. We spoke with a retired NYPD detective explaining what detectives are dealing with now.
The detectives are probably canvassing for video surveillance, even days ahead of this in case there was some kind of preparation. And the detectives are interviewing witnesses, canvassing for video surveillance in the location, any of the vicinity. Is a lot. That's like the Ring of Steel over there. So lots of cameras there where they could have walked by. So they're trying to see their travel, their path of travel, anything that could lead to some kind of probative investigation that would lead to more information regarding this attack.
So we know Mayor Mamdani was inside Gracie Mansion on Saturday when everything was unfolding here, just steps from his home. He did release a statement saying that he's condemning both the protest and the violence. We are expecting to hear from him as well as Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch in just a few minutes. At 9 o'clock, they will be briefing the media and the public as to where this investigation stands, and we hopefully will find out more. Hopefully we'll find out more about the suspects as well. Back to you.
All right, Jessica Formosa with our team at Fox 5 in New York. Thanks so much for joining us here and bringing that latest update. And as she did mention later on today, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani will be hosting a press conference, providing an update on this investigation. We will be carrying it for you in full here at Live Now from Fox. Staying on this developing story, I want to bring us out to this. It's a social media post courtesy of the FBI. They say this, an update on yesterday's incident in New York near Gracie Mansion. Two subjects were arrested on scene yesterday and remain in custody. FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force is investigating the matter with our partners at NYPD as well as the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. Preliminary analysis confirms that one of the devices ignited and deployed by the subjects was an IED explosive. Tests remain ongoing for other devices, and we will continue to update the public as able. Thank you to the brave law enforcement officers who took quick action and responded to what could have been a deadly attack. The public can report any additional information to the FBI by calling 1-800-CALL-FBI or submitting a tip online. And then we do have a statement, as Jessica had mentioned, from New York City Mayor Mamdani. He said this: yesterday, white supremacist Jake Lang organized a protest outside Gracie Mansion rooted in bigotry and racism. Such hate has no place in New York City. It is an affront to our city's values and the unity that defines who we are. What followed was even more disturbing. Violence at a protest is never acceptable. The attempt to use an explosive device and hurt others is not only criminal, it is reprehensible. and the antithesis of who we are. I want to thank the brave men and women of the NYPD who acted quickly to keep New Yorkers safe. Our officers ran toward danger without hesitation, demonstrating once again the courage and dedication it takes to protect this city every single day. My administration is closely monitoring the situation, and I remain in close contact with our police commissioner. So again, later on today, 9 a.m. Eastern time, so in a little over half an hour of now, Mayor Mamdani will be hosting that press conference. We'll bring you all of those updates and details as soon as it gets underway. I do want to stay in New York, but turning again to the major headline that we're following, which is the escalating situation in the Middle East. So on Sunday, just yesterday, the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, he did speak to some reporters, making some quick remarks on this situation escalating and unfolding in Iran. This is what he had to say.
There's the white balance. All right, here, let me see where I put this. All right, and folks, just for your information, Trump just said that he wouldn't sign any legislation until Congress passed the SAVE Act. I'm going to talk about the SAVE Act and how awful it is after I finish talking about the oil reserve, so your people will know, okay? Well, we've all seen that over the past week, Trump's war with Iran has sent oil prices skyrocketing through the roof. It sent gas prices at the pump up 30 or 40 cents. American families are already feeling it. Gas prices are just jumping and jumping and jumping, now more than 40 cents higher than they were before this war started. So that's why today I'm calling on President Trump to immediately release oil from our strategic petroleum reserve, which will make the price come down by quite a lot. When oil prices spike like this, costs ripple through the entire economy. It's not just what you pay at the pump. Airline tickets go up because fuel oil is so expensive. Shipping costs go up, so the goods on your grocery shelves go up. And American families are paying more across the board. At the same time, the American people have made clear they're opposed to Trump's war. The administration has no goals or strategy. Every day, Trump has a different reason for why we did it and a different end game. Makes no sense. Never had a war like this where the president cannot articulate why we went to war and why we're putting our soldiers at risk and why we're spending billions and billions of dollars, which could be spent here at home to reduce the costs Americans pay. The instability created by Trump in this war is already hitting families in their wallets, and that's why we have the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve is for moments just like this, when because of either a war or a very bad weather occurrence, you're supposed to use, the president should use the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to lower that price. If the president released a significant amount of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which he's allowed to do by law, boom, the price would go way down. When wars and global crises disrupt energy markets, the United States can release oil to stabilize the price. And we have a lot of precedents about this. Presidents of both parties, Democrats and Republicans, have used the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, during global disruptions to keep that price down. But Trump, instead of using this tool, which so many other presidents have used to lower prices at the pump, he's saying the market will heal very quickly. President Trump, listen to your average driver who's paying 40 cents more a gallon, that prices are healing very quickly. Listen to your truck driver who drives a truck for a living, who has said if the price keeps going up, he may go out of business. And you say, oh, they'll heal very quickly. And now we're learning something even crazier from this administration, that the Trump administration is considering selling oil to China. We need it here to lower the price, not going to China. And I will introduce a bill in the near future. I will introduce a bill to ban the sale of U.S. oil to China. Thinking about selling oil to one of our biggest adversaries when Americans are paying too much for gasoline and other petroleum products is outrageous. American families cannot afford to simply wait and hope for the price to come down. The solution is right here at home, Trump. Use the SPR, release it, prices will come down. Stop this blather that it'll go away soon. It won't. There's a war going on over there. Just last night I saw a big oil refinery in Iran hit by missiles. That makes the price of oil go up even further. So at least use the SPR to get the price down. Okay. Now, on the SAVE Act. This morning, the president said he will not sign any legislation that passes Congress until the SAVE Act passes. That means the president's asking for total gridlock. The SAVE Act will not pass because it is such a pernicious, nasty piece of legislation. The SAVE Act is Jim Crow 2.0. More than 20 million people would lose their right to vote. And you would need to register either a passport or your original birth certificate. How many people have that? How many people have that? It would eliminate vote by mail. Tell that to a senior citizen who's confined to their home in a wheelchair that they're going to lose their right to vote. And he would purge the voter rolls using an AI system set up by Musk and Doge. So you could show up at the polling place this November and they'd say you're no longer on the rolls. They don't even notify you of it. Millions of people would be purged from the rolls because of this system that Musk and Doge put in. You wouldn't be notified. You'd show up at the polling place and they'd say, sorry, Mr. Jones, sorry, Miss Smith, you're not on the rolls anymore. They don't even notify you. This is one of the nastiest pieces of legislation that I've ever seen. It is going back to the old South, where people were prohibited from voting, and spreading it to every corner of America. It is Jim Crow 2.0. And when Trump says that he will not sign any legislation until Congress passes Doge, Mr. President, we ain't passing Doge. You are calling for gridlock in the entire Congress, and none of the bills that will help reduce the costs to people for prescription drugs, for electricity, for home ownership will pass because of your bullheaded, ridiculous fiat that you won't sign any legislation till Doge passes, because Doge ain't passing. Even Republicans opposed, even Republicans oppose this SAVE Act because it is so bad. That's why it hasn't passed in the Senate. Mr. President, stop this idiocy. Stop saying you must have the SAVE Act, which is vicious and brings America back to Jim Crow. Stop hurting America because of your own stupid whims.
Any
Okay?
questions?
I think you know where I stand.
Because that was the thing that was psychologically messing him up. And then he's thinking, right, I need to change my stop size. I'm like, you don't need to change your stop size. You just need to deal with the fact that your strategy only wins 30% of the time. And actually, further down the road, he's got past that. But when I was coaching him, I was like, we know we might have to find or tweak this, because you simply can't operate with that.
Coming from the White House, from the U.S. president, is going to determine the future of this policy. But then also who can consolidate power as far as these institutions and who the supreme leader is and where they come from the political structure, I think is going to show us the path ahead.
Region Cruise Lines, that's down 2.5%. Now, the sector that's been benefiting, again, this is to no surprise, are the defense sectors, energy as well. But taking a look at defense this morning, RTX and Northrop Grumman up 1.8% in the pre-market, John.
Danny Berger with the update. Danny, thank you. Looking forward to the program. Danny and Matt Miller guiding you through the opening bell in about 29 minutes' time. Equity futures, negative 0.8%. Busy week on deck, headlined by CPI data on Wednesday. And if this conflict continues, that CPI data could look very different in the next few months. Bloomberg's Mike McKee has more. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, John. It is inflation week. You guys were talking about that with Esther George, and there are a couple of inflation numbers that are important. CPI we get on Wednesday, but we start today with the New York Fed's expectations index. What do people think about the possibility of oil prices in the future? Maybe it's too early because when these surveys wrap up, we hadn't quite gotten into the war the way we have, but it's something to watch. Also, NFIB has inflation numbers in it. The small business folks on Tuesday mentioned CPI on Wednesday. Remember, it carries with it as well some distortions from the government shutdown that may make it come in lower than it otherwise would, and it probably isn't going to pick up anything from the war. But Thursday, we get jobless claims, trade, and housing starts. Jobless claims, the one everybody watching, and then I put this as a separate one, Friday, because Friday's huge. Friday, we get PCE inflation, and that's the one that matters for the Fed. We also get income and spending, durable goods, GDP, second revision, and Michigan sentiment. Now, that's going to be something to watch because that will capture part of the war. Not a whole lot of it, but it will capture part of it. And we'll see what Americans think about not only inflation, but about their overall mood and whether it has really hurt them. The good news that I have for you, though, is that this is the blackout period and we have no Fed speak. Now until the 18th, we'll be able to sit back and just watch the data without worrying what the Fed's going to do. And I know you were talking with Esther George about this, but the Fed's not going to do anything next Wednesday because it's going to be too early for them to have enough data. But after that, as you said, all bets are off.
Mike McKee, I wonder if that's better news for them than it is for us at the moment, the fact they're in a blackout period. Michael, thank you. Michael McKee, go back to their last statement at the end of January. Available indicators suggest that the economic activity has been expanding at a solid pace. Job gains have remained low and the unemployment rate has shown some signs of stabilisation. Inflation remains somewhat elevated. Can you copy and paste that next Wednesday?
I think if they do, then they'd be in a vacuum with a very different view of the world, because since that report, you've seen 92 jobs eliminated in the latest payrolls report. You've seen inflation expectations in the short-term spike on the heels of oil prices going above $100 a barrel. The scenario looks completely turned on its head to the worst case for them, which is stagflationary shock.
Speaking of turning things on its head, this headline just crossed. I want to bring it to you. Zelensky, Ukrainian leader, 11 states have requested Ukraine's security support. How quickly that story has reversed?
Well, Ukraine has had the opportunity to experience modern warfare. And when I say modern warfare, it's about dealing with drones and drone warfare. There has been a mismatch in pricing between drones that cost a couple $100 to produce and missiles that cost $1 million to produce, blowing them up. And one of the things that the Ukrainians have done is to figure out ways to disable some of those drones. And so they're helping the United States with their efforts. So how much the tables have turned, what this does for the Ukraine-Russia conflict is beyond my ability to really game out scenarios. So on one hand, you've got Ukraine in a better spot with the United States and with other allies. On the other hand, Russia suddenly can sell its oil. So,
relief.
I mean, how do you square this to understand exactly where we are in that equation?
It's really, really complicated. That headline just catching my eye, crossing the Bloomberg right now. Let's turn to the main event this morning. There is a call set to take place any moment now between G7 finance ministers discussing the potential to release energy reserves as crude overnight blasted through triple digits and approached 120. Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall joins us now for more. Hey, Tyler.
Yeah, hey, John, good morning. Well, we're waiting for this call to commence, and reportedly it does have the U.S.'s backing as we look to see if there's any potential to bring down and boost the supply of oil. Now, we know that the U.S. would be looking for some ways to help American consumers as the price of oil trickles down to retail gasoline, and the White House has been playing defense on trying to reassure Americans when it comes to the health of the economy. We heard just last week from Secretary of State Marco Rubio that President Trump would convene a council, including his energy secretary Secretary and the Treasury Secretary on ways to help keep domestic prices low, but we haven't gotten an update from there. There had been reporting that the White House was potentially going to ask Congress for a gas tax holiday, but that hasn't emerged either. And then we've seen some other points put on the table, including President Trump last week floating the insurance for those ships crossing the Strait of Hormuz, also a potential naval escort. And then lastly, as you were just discussing, we saw that loosening when it comes to a waiver for India to start to buy Russian barrels. Importantly, people familiar with the matter tell us that heading into this meeting, John, some European nations are concerned that the U.S. is going to ask for a loosening on sanctions when it comes to Russia barrels, just as we're starting to see some of those severe impacts hit the Russian economy.
Brent crude this morning still higher, 102.65, but off session highs. Tyler Kendall there with the latest. Tyler, stay close as we wait for some of those headlines to cross regarding that meeting, that conversation, discussion between G7 finance ministers. Sarah House of Wells Fargo joined us now for more. Sarah, all of a sudden it feels very different. But how much has changed for you and the team with your outlook following this move in energy?
Yeah, so I think a lot has changed. So certainly the inflation backdrop. So we get CPI later this week, but I think the February numbers are already old news. So we're looking for just the move we've seen already. If sustained this month, you could see gas prices close to $4 a gallon, and so you're talking about inflation close to 3.25%, 3.5% already in March and April. So I think it's a big difference in terms of the picture of the consumer. So expecting that to be rather resilient this year with help from some of the tax cuts, but that benefit is essentially wiped out, I think, with some of the moves we've seen in oil prices.
A lot can change between now and March 18th. March 18th, of course, the next Federal Reserve meeting. But let's assume that meeting was today. Could they copy and paste that statement from January, or have things changed that much for them as well?
I don't think they could. I think they're going to have to downplay that idea about the stabilization that we've seen. I don't think it's completely gone out the window. If you look at where the unemployment rate is, it's back where it was in September, and you've seen relative to when they met in January, it hasn't moved that much. But I think where you're continuing to see the weak hiring backdrop, and still, if you look at unemployment on a year-ago basis, it's still trending up. So I think there's more reason for them to be nervous about the labor market picture. And then, of course, you have the inflation picture going the wrong way now. So hard to say that it's only somewhat elevated when you're going back up above 3% here imminently.
Sarah, this feels like a stagflation moment, and this is something that a lot of people have raised. What's the Fed's stagflation playbook?
So the traditional playbook is to look through these negative supply shocks and focus on what's happening in terms of also the demand side. Think about, okay, if you raise the prices once, that increases the level, but that's not necessarily a sustained increase in inflation. The problem, of course, for the Fed is that they've had negative supply shock after negative supply shock, leaving us with inflation above their target for 5+ years now. And so I think they have to be a little bit more sensitive to that upward thrust on inflation coming from this, but it's really tricky given that I think the consumer is in a worse position than where we saw them back in 2022. So I think right now it's a wait and see game. I think they can still try to look through the spike in energy, but it's going to be harder to cut through, I think, just given that they do have that we have seen inflation elevated for so long.
Sarah, it's hard to get a handle on just how quickly financial conditions already are tightening, regardless of what the Fed does. And I'm talking about the long end of the yield curve in the United States, in Europe, in the United Kingdom. I just wonder how much that adds stress to an already potentially fragile consumer in the United States, whether that alone is making you reassess what your growth profile for 2026 looks like.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't help if we see tighter financial conditions. I think where I'm more worried about is just that immediate inflationary pass-through to the consumer, where gasoline isn't one thing that they can easily cut back on. Sure, there's maybe some discretionary driving that you can see consumers pare down, but I think by and large that this is going to be a stress on their inflation profile. This is coming at a time when, if you look at income ex transfer payments, that's already in real terms close to flat over the past year. And so I think this is really the added strain on the consumer that I think is making it difficult for them to maintain that pace of spending that we've seen, especially given where markets are right now. I think there's some questions over how much of that boost from the wealth effect we'll get going forward compared to what we've had over the past year or so.
Precisely. Sarah, thank you. Sarah House of Wells Fargo. Energy bills were already going to be pretty steep, particularly in the northeast. With this move, you've got the additional gas increase, gas spike as well on top of that. If you were hoping the tax refund story would contribute to a cyclical bounce, and I certainly was hoping that would be the case, those hopes have taken a hit with this action over the last week.
It's going to go to paying for how much it costs to fill up the tank, and this is where it comes to demand destruction. It might not happen as quickly because of the extra cash from this boost, but that won't go towards some of the consumer discretionary that a lot of people were hoping for.
If you are just tuning in, welcome to the programme. We've got stocks set up like this with negative about 1% on the S&P 500. Not too dramatic given developments overnight, particularly in the commodity market. For Brent crude and WTI as things stand, we are higher by 11 to 12%, still triple digits, but about $17 off the highs overnight, which is pretty crazy.
It just kind of makes me wonder what people are looking at. They expect this to be short-lived, and they expect some sort of measure from releasing strategic petroleum reserves to sort of stave off any increase in pricing in the near term. Let's see if it sticks. Let's hear what we hear from this call.
The opening bout just around the corner. Still waiting for headlines from that call with G7 finance ministers discussing the release of emergency reserves. In the meantime, let's get you an update on stories worldwide. Here is your Bloomberg brief. NATO defense is intercepting a ballistic missile fired from Iran that was heading towards Turkey. It marks the second NATO interception over Turkey in just the last week. Turkish leadership already warning Iran against actions that could expand the conflict further. Elsewhere, the United States ordering non-essential diplomats in Saudi Arabia to leave after U.S. service member wounded last weekend died overnight, bringing the U.S. death toll to 7. Iran says more than 1,300 people have died so far. Elsewhere, the president not ruling out sending U.S. ground troops into the country. The administration saying it can achieve its goals in Iran without American boots on the ground, but refusing to take the option off the table. The president saying, quote, if we did that, they would be decimated. That is your Bloomberg brief. Up next, we'll set you up for the day ahead, plus Alicia Levine of BNY Wealth drops by with oil prices surging to 4-year highs. That conversation up next.
is back to take a look under the hood of the business of Formula One.
Hi, I'm here to see Pierre Gasly.
Welcome to my workplace.
Do you feel pressure?
Massive pressure.
Ferrari is the best example that we can be very proud of the past to look after the future.
From the iconic brand setting the standard.
Oh boy.
Can you imagine Ferrari without racing?
No, and I say no, no, no.
To the newcomers forging ahead.
I grew up my whole life racing against the boys.
This global phenomenon continues to chart new territory.
This was a tennis court 8 days ago.
I can't even believe that. And the speed of the business has never moved faster.
My career might stop. I'll still be driving some.
Yeah. Probably very fast.
Yeah.
This is so exciting!
This season, we're along for the ride.
What year did you start the company?
In 2013.
Who gave you your initial capital?
General Catalyst, Jim Breyer, and Excel.
And they made on their money?
They did well.
Well.
The countdown is on. Everything you need to get the edge at the end of the market day. Get ahead of tomorrow's trading with The Close. Weekdays on Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute automotive news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Matt Miller in Detroit, and this is Bloomberg.
Geopolitics by the dip, we've all heard it, we write about it every time this happens, but I don't see a lot of liquidity on the sidelines today. Even individual investors are, increasingly more bullish than our advisors and our surveys. So I think that it's a really unusual time in terms of just kind of catching up to this bull market.
That was Savita Subramanian of Bank of America, not bullish at the index level at all, looking for something like 7,100. I say not bullish considering where everyone else is, looking for a move to 75 to 8K on the S&P. Last night felt like capitulation in the energy market. Is this what capitulation looks like in the equity market, with futures down by 1% on the S&P, on the Nasdaq down by 1.2, on the Russell down by 1.8?
Yeah, we're about 4% from all-time highs. The answer is no. This is not what capitulation feels like, and part of the reason why is because even in the oil market, there is an expectation that this will be short-lived. This isn't going to go on for months and months. When that gets challenged, if that gets challenged, this picture is going to change.
Brent crude up by close to 13% in today's session after pushing 120 overnight. As we count you down to the opening bell, here's the trading diary for the week ahead. 4:30 Eastern Time, the President delivering remarks at the GOP members' issues conference. Look out for that. Tomorrow, earnings from Coles. Wednesday, CPI data. Plus, you will hear from the Fed Vice Chair of Supervision, Mickey Bowman, so look out for that too. On Thursday, Dollar General earnings plus another round of jobless claims and the US trade balance. On Friday, core PCE, durable goods orders, plus UMich consumer sentiment, which if gas prices continue climbing at this rate, that could change very quickly.
It is a pretty direct correlation. Gas prices up, sentiment down. Watch that to be reflected in this survey.
Let's down our top story. The price of crude hitting triple digits overnight for the first time since 2022. Alicia Levine of BNY Wealth writing, markets are signaling a temporary supply shock, not economic or financial crisis. Our base case is volatility now, normalization later. Alicia joins us now for more. Alicia, good morning.
Good morning.
What's the path to normalization look like?
So I think you need more panic in the markets. So what you saw in the oil market early this morning at Brent up near 120, 125, as you point out, the S&P is down 2% from the all-time high. So oil up 50% in the week since the strikes, and yet the S&P down 2%. Even emerging markets and international down 7% from the high is not the capitulation. So when this military action was not over in 48 hours, right, and the market still has somewhere in the back of the mind that, the administration is going to cry uncle at some point, so this is going to be quick. I suspect at this point you're going to have to see that quick, sharp downdraft to get it out of the system with oil at 120, and then we probably move on. On the other side of this, you are in a well-supplied world on the energy side. So you have to get through this. Now, whether it's a week or 2 weeks, I would be concerned about 2 months. And then we would change our view here. We would change our view if this went on more than a month or so. Because we'd have to, because then inflation starts getting priced into everything, into food, into consumer products on the industrial side.
Then the story's changed.
And then the story's changed because then you do actually bring in the Fed. But at this point, if you look at what's going on militarily, I'm no longer a military strategist, but
sure.
But the drones and missiles are down 80 to 90% from where we were Monday morning a week ago. So you now have this decentralization, which perhaps is annoying, but may not be as effective as we move on. So if you think back, are you in a place where 3 to 4 weeks from now somebody can claim victory? Probably. But again, this is about duration and this is about time unknown. From here, we would assume normalization later.
At the same time, then do you see opportunities, or do you think it's too early to buy the dip like JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley are talking about?
So there's definitely opportunities here. I mean, the most fascinating thing is if you had reversion to the mean everywhere in every asset class and within the S&P as well. Gold is down 3% from this. The dollar is up 2%. Emerging markets down 7%. You know, NASDAQ is down 1.5%. So when you think about what we came into by the end of February, we're serious, you know, underpricing of U.S. markets versus rest of world, and the dollar very weak. And then all of a sudden you get this reversion. Software is now up 15% from the lows. You know, the semi-software comparison is now reversed. So you got reversion everywhere. I think there will be great opportunities here. I just think that the market hasn't quite priced in. If you're having like a panic in the oil market, you need to also have the panic in the equity market to say, okay, all in.
The reason why I'm asking this is because everyone's saying there will be. There will be.
That's the problem.
Right? So at what point, right? I mean, it's sort of this interesting thing, and yet it's not ever getting there, I guess, because people are all expecting it to be a great buying point. I mean, what is going to be the trigger one way or another? I think you have to kind of probably get to 6,500 on the S&P here, which I think is probably likely, only because if we're keeping with energy prices over 100.
As well, Afghan refugees, Iran now hosts like 1.65 million Afghan refugees. We are receiving overwhelming calls of support from them. There's anxiety, there's panic. They're quite worried about everything which is going on inside the country. For now, we don't have a clear picture in terms of, we don't see a large movement of people crossing international borders, but as you have been hearing, that many civilians are fleeing their homes as the bombs are dropping all around the country.
And I'm just looking at how many locations that you have staff in right across Iran: Shiraz, Mashhad, Isfahan, at the border with Afghanistan. In the current conditions, what is it like for you to operate with the internet blackout as well?
It's very difficult to carry out our humanitarian responsibilities, but UNHCR is on the ground. We have stood with the people of Iran.
Overall, yeah.
So there is a moment where there is a tipping point.
There's a tipping point at some point. I can't tell you when that is, but you know, if you look out, let's call it a year, then we're in a better place.
Okay, Alicia, good to see you. Lots to think about. Alicia Levine of BNY Wealth. Not the only one who considers this moment that way, that ultimately things have changed, and maybe they change for a more bearish outcome for crude compared to where we were before this conflict.
Well, and this is something even the president has raised himself, the idea that if you do have more stability in the region, should this lead to some sort of resolution, you actually have more production, and guess what? The U.S. is going to be producing that much more, because when prices stay above a certain point, all those oil rigs can start turning on the taps. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic with a lot of whipsaws ahead.
Of course, Jeff Curry of Carlisle sees it completely differently. There's a very, very different view on what this moment means for this energy market.
A structural insurance premium, risk insurance premium, based on the fact that shipping on seas suddenly has new risk. And you have to start to look at that geopolitics degree in a different way. It's something that we keep coming back to. I would love to talk with him more about that.
What is it about spring and Sunday evenings when it comes to financial markets? Regional banking crisis, right?
Can I just say, I feel like it's been every Sunday night since we have started 2025. So I guess on one hand, what is it about Sunday night that always gets me glued to my terminal?
I think I said years ago, the year begins in March.
Yeah.
You know, everyone puts out these forecasts looking ahead to the year ahead. January, everyone gets together and talks about it. You get to March and everything resets.
Yeah.
And resets pretty quickly.
Here we are, doing the same thing.
Here we are. The coverage continues tomorrow. David Tinsley of Bank of America, Kevin Foley of JP Morgan, Abigail Watt of UBS, Jim Karen of Morgan Stanley from New York City this morning. Good morning. Looking forward to tracking these major ruptures with you all week. From New York City, this was Bloomberg Surveillance.
Day 5.
at the BNP Paribas Open. Coco Gauff's tournament is over. A 5-2 down to Alex Ayala in the opening set, the American called for the trainer due to an injury to her left arm.
Right. Well, if you got my little alert that I put out, I put one out Friday about crude. I put one out yesterday about crude. Just to try and see if anybody wanted to jump in on the futures that opened at 6 p.m. last night. And if you were there, you saw it. I had bought a long on Friday, like in the last 30 seconds of the futures market being open, just because it was an obvious play. And not to my surprise, when it opened last night, it jumped from $92 a barrel and went all the way up to almost at 115, 120-ish a barrel. So if you got in on that and with any amount of leverage, I mean with 10x leverage, you could have tripled your money. It was pretty sweet. Now, however, they're talking about releasing a reserves, or the international community is talking about it, and America is supporting it. They're about to meet and discuss it, which they'll likely go ahead and release 200 to 300 million barrels of reserves to try to stabilize this rising cost of oil. Over the last, I think since Thursday or Friday, it has ran up over 20%. That was a hell of an opportunity. Congratulations if you got in on it. If you're curious as to what to do now, I would wait to hear what they have to say in the international community about what they're going to do. But odds are they're going to release those reserves. And as we speak, look at that red candle. I have short. I've got a short right now. In fact, I will go ahead and show you my little play down here. It isn't much. This is literally all the money I have to play with right now because things are super tight. Anybody that's invested in anything else, you're probably hurting because just about everything else in the market is down. The dollar, however, is looking pretty damn strong, which is going to cause silver and gold ultimately to come down. These little fluctuations right now, these are catalyst related. But typically speaking, when you see the dollar performing, you can watch gold and silver come down. Because what you're seeing, when you see the price of silver, not the value, when you see the price of silver going up, like I said, it's not the value going up, it's the value of the dollar coming down. They are inversely related that way. I mean, if you know anything about silver, that's pretty much very well known. But yeah, I'm going to be watching these crude futures like a hawk today because you see that balance right there? That's all the money I've got in the world right now. And it's all in. I'm pretty much homeless at the moment. Yeah, I had me some really bad investments. I'm one of those that bought into crypto when it was at 95. After I sold my house, and I literally dumped the majority of the proceeds from my house into crypto and then lost my ass. But it's not a loss until it's realized, right? So it's not a loss until you sell, and I'll be damned. It's that money's locked up anyway in staking pools, so I couldn't touch it if I wanted to. But I am hurting really bad. That's all the money I've got in the world, so... Yeah, I saw this opportunity on Friday and had to take it. And that was $92. So it was over $350 last night, and then I woke up to another of my ass being handed to me. But I got out of that, and now I'm in on a short. So, Lord Jesus, please, I could definitely use it. So, who else is investing in this? Are you going to miss this opportunity? Come on now, get in on it. It's like almost one of the only things performing in the market right now. And look at these prices. These are all of the crude oil futures, starting with April. If you can't read it, I don't know how clear it is to you. Oh yeah, my big ass head's in the way, isn't it? Here we go. This is April, May, June, July. And as you can see, the further out you get, the lower those price points get. I am invested in, on Coinbase it says March. You can't find March on TradingView. But I'm pretty sure it's the same. Coinbase seems to have a bit of a nomenclature issue every time I've ever invested on anything. See how down here it says March? That's what I'm in on. And this says April. So, yeah, if you know the difference there, please let me know. Because I'm certainly no expert. But I thank you for coming here and listening to what I got to say. Let's take a look now at what some of the news is seeing. I see Donald Trump's face up there. Let's see what they're running their mouth about.
We have that oil. We have the world is very well supplied with oil right now. The United States is a net oil exporter. We're a net natural gas exporter. We are suffering high prices, not in natural gas, but in oil, because it's a globally connected market. We're communicating with our allies abroad. The oil is there. You're seeing a little bit of fear premium in the marketplace, but the world is not short of oil today or natural gas.
That's true.
Let's get the latest with Bloomberg's Patrick Sykes in Istanbul. And Patrick, we hope you're staying safe there. The latest news that NATO intercepting a ballistic missile heading for Turkey. What is the latest in the region?
Turkey?
Yeah, thankfully that's fairly far away from here. That's down in the south of Turkey near Gaziantep. But it is the second incident in about a week that's happened here in Turkey. And it's worth mentioning after the last one, which Iran denied, the Turks were very outspoken. They were saying, you know, this is we can overlook this perhaps once, but if it happens again, then it's a different conversation. We'll have to see how Iran responds.
All these mistakes and accidental blowing up of things.
Elsewhere, I think in the
Come on now, you know who that
is. The Saudis have been cutting back on production.
I keep seeing all kind of BS on social media about how the United States blew up the school, and you know, while there are some compelling reports regarding it, I don't buy it quite yet. It just seems like something that's in the wheelhouse of Iran. You know, they kill their women all day anyway. It just seems like something that they would do and try and frame the United States for. That just seems more likely than the United States doing something like that, especially on purpose. Because, I mean, just think about it. If anybody in our armed forces did that, somebody in his platoon or in his little group or whatever would probably kick the ever-loving shit out of him. This wouldn't stay quiet if it was America. I don't buy it. I don't buy it yet. I don't buy the people that are saying that was America that blew up that school. So, you know, tell me why I'm wrong. And I realize I could be. I just, the reports are unsubstantiated so far, even though some quote-unquote credible sources have been suggesting it. Nobody has said it right out that it's guaranteed, confirmed the United States. Honestly, I think it was Iran trying to set us up, frame us, and make it look like we did it. It's just not in our wheelhouse, and it certainly is in theirs, as far as how they treat their women is concerned. But I would love to hear your opinion. I would love to see what you are interested in the chat, so by all means, drop a suggestion. I will gladly look it up. Let's see. Stock heat map is, I haven't been on it because you can expect everything's down. Except for energy. I just heard, too, that people were talking about natural gas futures as well. Now, while I don't think there's quite as much money to be made on those as it is for crude, look at that. Pretty sure we're probably going to fall below the $100 a barrel mark. Well, that's why I've got me a short right here. But, yeah. International community discussing releasing 200 or 300 million barrels of oil. The United States supports it. And we are not short on oil, guys. There's no reason why we should be paying more at the pump. But you can bet, if they don't release those reserves, you can bet on rising cost of gas at the pump. In fact, you might end up with a little bit of a spike in a few days just from last night's activity. But providing those oil reserves come down, are released, then it'll probably come back down. How much are they going to release, or how much is that really going to affect things? Well, we'll have to see. I seriously doubt that we're going to have enough to make the price actually go down more than it has been on average. You know, these things are very carefully crafted and calculated. So they're probably only going to release just enough to, you know, flatline it. I seriously doubt that they're going to release enough to drop the price down to $80 a barrel or where it was last week. No, that probably ain't going to happen. Crypto heat maps looking pretty flat. We are 23 minutes away from the market bell. Well, let's see what Bloomberg has to say.
Everything back together again, because putting everything back together again means restarting field.
Actually, I see Zorro Mom Douchebag on TV up here. I think that's him.
Moving the device from the area. Once the device was removed, those evacuated were allowed to return to their homes. I am grateful for their continued work to keep New Yorkers safe. And let me say this plainly. Anyone who comes to New York City to bring violence to our streets will be held accountable in accordance with the law. As this case continues to develop, I will remain in close contact and communication with our police commissioner.
You know, his
I want to
wife
say thank you once again
was caught
to
liking
everyone who acted on
pictures
Saturday
of the
to protect their
massacre
fellow New
of
Yorkers
the
and to
Jews
uphold
there in
the
October
values
a
of this
couple
city.
years ago.
Now I would like to invite Police Commissioner Tisch to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. First, I will tell you that we are not at liberty to discuss many aspects of the ongoing investigation at this time due to...
Well, then what the hell are you doing on here talking?
Energy stocks were ripping. Software stocks were getting crushed. We talked about the halo trade. So you had all these heavy parts of the AI trade were shooting higher. Mag 7 was lagging. There was a lot of problems being presented to the professional investment community. And now you have this layered on top.
Yeah.
And so it's become even more challenging, which again is, I think, like, you know, how do you describe what's happening in markets to someone on the street who says, what's going on in markets? I don't really know if it would land to say, well, a bunch of professional managers were caught offsides. But that to me feels like I'd have to come up with a plain English version of that. As much as there is a response to the geopolitical actual actions happening in the Middle East, it feels right now still like the market is responding to itself, in that a lot of people were wrong on how they thought the year would play out, and on a number of levels, not just on a level of, you know, defense conflict. And that is sort of what we're seeing underneath and on top of the surface now.
Just to put a little context on this, and you were pointing this out, kind of the winners and losers of last week. I've got the Wi-Fi Interactive pulled up because I've been really interested in the sectors this year. Now, this is just the 5 days, so this is last week. Energy stocks were green, what you would expect. Other commodities lower, that's the XLB in the lower right. Healthcare has been bad, consumer staples. What happened last week was more a trigger, a bit of a rotation. Energy accepted. You know, consumer staples, for example, had been one of the best performers of the year.
Yeah, can you make that year to date?
Yeah, let's look at the year to date. So XLP is number 2.
Yeah,
so,
right.
And and by the way, if there is an economic threat, and people are throwing around the word stagflation this morning, and they're throwing around the word recession this morning, if that were really the concern, those last 5 days wouldn't look like this, right? XLV and XLP, consumer staples and healthcare, would probably be doing better on a relative basis, right?
Yeah.
People would be going into defensives, and that's not uniformly, at least, what we saw. It was sort of an excuse for a little bit of a rejiggering of the rotation.
Yeah.
You know, rotation trade to some extent. I mean, financials is the worst performing group on the year to date. I think remains pretty interesting. Tech XLK is number 2 worst performer. So we'll see if this map fundamentally changes as we head through the next couple of weeks beyond just last week.
Yeah, I mean, another way to cut it, unfortunately, I don't have a visual to bring with me to this party, but looking at just the S&P 500 stocks that were the best performers last week.
Yeah.
So stuff that went up in the market's worst week in a couple of months. Trade Desk was up 22%. That's a software stock that, including last week's move, is still down 22% this year. Intuit, still down 27% this year. Stock was up 17% last week. Kind of go down the line. AppLovin up 15%. CrowdStrike, ServiceNow, Palantir, Workday, Datadog. A bunch of names that have been on the wrong side. Again, things people were wrong about heading into this year. how would the AI trade play out? There's a positive side still in some of these, kind of hardware names, let's say. But the idea that this would be the year that investors would go around knocking on the door of just about any software company and say, oh, you've got an AI problem now, we're going to take 10, 15, 20, 50% off your stock price right off the top, and then we'll figure out later what the problem is. Those trades reversing, to your point, those trades reversing last week suggests there's a positioning, a conviction problem as much as there is a fundamental one, though, of course, pretty much no oil moving through a place where 20% of the world's oil tends to move through is a pending problem, let's say. Well, although I think our next guest is going to make us a major pitch about why it's actually the biggest important thing right now.
Yeah, 20% of the world's oil is cut off as long as the Strait of Hormuz is closed. That usually translates to a 10x reflection in the price per barrel. So that being said, if they don't release these oil reserves, the price of crude is probably going to shoot up to close to $200 a gallon. Maybe probably more around 150 range, because 200 is ridiculous. So whenever they decide to do this, which I am currently looking for right now, that's when we will see oil do something other than trading sideways like it is. But me personally, I've got a short. And I'm hoping it comes down. Obviously. Anyway, let us... What are they saying in New York?
For their own safety. Acting as police officers do on instinct and training to protect people they did not know and would likely never meet. Moments like that remind us what policing truly requires, because behind every counterterrorism operation...
I was just talking about this supposed terrorist activity in New York. Let's see what the BBC is saying.
Greenwood's package that, it looks like a thick black smoke has,
below me. I'll go back to Bloomberg.
The metrics start becoming a bit more complicated for lots of the operators.
I don't care about Africa. Let's go to Yahoo. They're not doing much anything either. Let's see what BBC is talking about Iran. I'm going to bring that up. Put that over the New York. And let's listen in on what the BBC is saying.
Just expanding, it's spreading, and I think most importantly, the civilians are paying a high toll, which is very concerning.
I want to also get your thoughts on another aspect of what is going on inside Iran, the power structure, the move towards Iran's next supreme leader being announced. We don't have a name. We don't even know if that meeting has taken place yet, as our correspondent was just telling me. What do you think is going to come out of this?
Yeah, so the names being floating vary, from very hardline conservative figures. I mean, the son of the late Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, a hardline figure, supposedly maybe a favorite of the more militaristic hardline core of the regime, the Revolutionary Guards. And then you also hear names of more moderate figures. For example, your correspondent mentioned the former President Hassan Rouhani, who's certainly seen as a more moderate individual or figure within the political structure. It's not clear. We don't know who it is, but I think even the course of this war itself will determine not just the person that's coming out of this, but also essentially the policy direction.
Oil's now below $100 a barrel. Come on down. Look at me and my whole $20 in profit. That'll make up for the $100 that I should have kept last night. And just so everybody's clear, I am fully transparent. This plus is only since last night. It's actually total for my entire profit of oil since I went long on Friday. My total profit is about $126. So it's about $40 off. Off of a $92 investment, which was all the money I had in the world. I say that's pretty good. You know, but I never profit like this when I throw thousands at it. Like I think I just told you guys, I recently sold my house and dumped the majority of those profits into crypto, bought in at 95. Yeah, I lost my ass. That's why I'm such a broke bitch at the moment. But yeah, I can never make these killer plays when I throw thousands at it. It's only when I have like a tiny bit of money that I throw at it, and yeah, I'll make double it, and with double your money sounds great. And it is. I am super grateful for it. But, you know, so it'd be interesting to see what happens with this today. I do want to keep some news around so we know when those reserves are going to be opened up, which they most likely are.
Added to his criticism of the UK Prime Minister's decision.
I don't care about your Prime Minister.
See inflation for the rest of the world significantly higher than it otherwise might have been. But even the oil's not going to come back like overnight. They'll be testing. They'll see what happens. And we still have a big risk latently in the western side of the Arabian Peninsula. We have the Houthis, and they have not activated yet. And they are a proxy still of Iran. And we haven't seen a complete shutoff. You know, we've seen a shutoff that people are arguing
yeah, they better keep their mouth shut. We're just flooring Iran right now, and I love it.
United States President Trump's vision to get to peace through strength.
Guys, we got 12 minutes till the opening. I'm going to go grab a quick smoke and I'll be back.
But it's why he's succeeding broadly. The second thing is a group of people, the FBI, state, our National Security Council, that are committed to bringing people home. And these are people that I am privileged to work with because they risk their lives. Some people don't know they're behind the scenes. But I know how much they make a difference. And I know and I see when President Trump unleashes talent, what we can do, how many people we can bring home. So I'd like to introduce you to our Deputy Director at the FBI, Deputy Director Christopher Rea, who's been a huge partner with us, SPIHA, with state, in bringing people home. So thank you.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Special Envoy Bowler, and thank you to everyone involved in organizing this important commemoration. I want to begin by thanking Secretary Rubio, as well as Special Envoy Bowler, for their advocacy and support of the interagency efforts to bring home all Americans held hostage or wrongfully detained abroad, and to get justice and answers for the families. This kind of advocacy is crucial. It keeps the momentum alive and ensures their stories are never forgotten. I also want to thank Dr. Gorka for his leadership and insight. Over the years, the FBI's and the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell have worked to secure the recovery of many Americans held hostage. But the case of Bob Levinson hits especially close to home. For nearly my entire career, we have been searching for Bob. It is deeply personal to me, and I'm extremely motivated as the Deputy Director of the FBI to bring closure to his family. As most of you know, Bob spent nearly 3 decades in service to our nation, including 22 years as an FBI special agent. Quite simply, he was one of ours. Our evidence suggests that Bob died in captivity in Iran, and he is the longest held American hostage in U.S. history. Today, unfortunately, marks 19 years since his abduction, and tomorrow, the Levinson family should have been celebrating Bob's 78th birthday. The urgency to uncover the facts of Bob's disappearance has never been greater. It would be deeply troubling to reach the 20-year mark without knowing what happened to him. The Levinson family's courage and advocacy have helped fuel years of tireless work by the FBI, the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell, and our interagency partners who continue to develop new leads and intelligence with the hope of resolving the case before Bob's next birthday. Last year, as most of you saw, we released 5 posters seeking information on those we believe responsible for his kidnapping, detention, and probable death. We have kept this story front and center, and we will never stop. Additionally, we've shared a list of those involved in this crime with our interagency and foreign partners so they can pursue justice if the opportunity arises. I'm deeply grateful to our agents, our employees, our investigative teams, and all the agency partners who have worked so hard to try to bring Bob home. They have not wavered in their pursuit of answers, and they continue to push forward every day. They are fighting not only for Bob and his family, but for the many, far too many, other families facing the same unimaginable circumstances. We will not back down. We will never abandon our own. Our mission is clear: bring our citizens home and ensure those responsible face American justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to welcome everyone here to the State Department. I wish it was on a happier occasion, although we do have things to celebrate in terms of Americans that have been returned, but also we remember those who have not returned. I want to open, first of all, just by stating the obvious. The United States is currently engaged in an operation targeting one of the world's leading hostage taker, the world's leading sponsor of terrorism, the regime in Iran. And first, I think we would all take a moment both to offer our thoughts, our prayers, and our condolences, and to honor the families of those who have fallen, the 7 Americans who have lost their lives in the initial hours of this operation. Incredibly brave Americans, and you saw 6 of them dignified return over the weekend, and we all are all in awe of their service, of their bravery, of their courage, and our hearts and our support extend out to their families in this very difficult moment, and the families of these incredible heroes. And heroic things are happening all the time, some of which will never make it to the headlines, but American men and women in uniform are conducting an extraordinary mission with extraordinary efficacy and efficiency and impact. Right. The goals of this mission are clear, and it's important to continue to remind the American people of why it is that the greatest military in the history of the world is engaged in this operation. It is to destroy the ability of this regime to launch missiles, both by destroying their missiles and their launchers, destroy the factories that make these missiles, and destroy their navy. I think we are all seeing right now the threat that this clerical regime poses to the region and to the world. They are trying to hold the world hostage. They are attacking their neighbors. They are attacking neighboring countries, their energy infrastructure, their civilian population. They're attacking embassies. This is a terrorist government. This is a terroristic regime. And we are seeing them conduct terrorism using nation-state elements, using weapons like missiles and one-way attack drones. And the objective of this...
It looks like those oil futures are coming down just a wee bit, which is good for my short, my tiny little $10 profit short. That is all the money in the world to me right now. So please, pretty please, pretty please, let's take a look at heat map. As expected, it is blood in the streets for everything except for the energy sector, obviously. I'm really not even concerned with any stocks because I know it's going to be sucking it today. But let's take a look at a few anyway. I made a video about SpaceX's coming IPO, and I am still watching their major suppliers, which whenever I pull up my list, anything you see the little red flag on, they are a supplier of SpaceX. ExxonMobil is probably going to be a good one. They're probably going to pop up a little bit because of the rise in oil, but I'm not sure how sustainable that's going to be. I mean, Exxon's always going to be a good play, but if you're a day trader, you might have an opportunity coming up. Dollar coming down, which is going to cause silver to go up a little bit. See that right there? What did I just say? Oil futures coming down a little bit. This is all of them, though. All the way throughout the entire year, baby. As you can see, the further out you get, the lower it gets, because the market is not expecting this conflict in Iran to last too very much longer. Well, relatively speaking, right? We have no idea. Back over $100 a barrel for the... yeah, whenever I point that out, this is for the futures. It's not... I mean, this is pretty close to the actual price, I do believe. Damn it, we're coming back up. Let's see what Rubio is saying. Did he say something?
Your love for your family members continues to drive this effort in days like today.
2 minutes till the opening bell.
March 9th marks the day that Robert Levinson went missing in Iran, and actually it was a case that I was also very involved in as a United States Senator, dating back to my very first day in the Senate. In fact, one of the first meetings I had, and to this I credit my former colleague, Senator Bill Nelson of Florida, introduced me to this case as soon as I got elected. And because of Mr. Levinson's ties to Florida. And we remained on that case throughout my career in the United States Senate, and it's one we will not forget. It's indicative of two things: the fact that Americans are taken all over the world, but it is particularly a reminder of the nature of the regime that we're dealing with in Tehran. We're honored to have his sons here today, Dan and Doug, with us. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you very much. And so today, in recognition of their extraordinary dedication, and really everyone's here, but in particular, we've dedicated the flag flown here today to the Levinson family. And
if he's just going to talk about that, I'm going to go over some more finance news. I'd really love to hear what they're doing with the oil reserves, if they're going to release those reserves and make my short profit a little bit.
The people, the transactions, and the technology.
I don't care about your advertisements, Bloomberg. Let's go to Yahoo. Nah, there goes a nickel every time those songs play. Is Bloomberg back at it?
All right, you want to see how stock markets trade on $100 oil? Well, today is your chance. We're looking at futures that are down only 1%.
Here comes the bell.
The drop on S&P futures. It follows a drop of more than 1% on the cash trade Friday, but it doesn't even bring us down to the 200-day moving average on the S&P. So interesting to watch. A relatively tepid response to what we saw yesterday as Brent
oil futures coming down.
$119 a barrel
the market
at one
opening.
point.
Come on down, baby.
America 250,
below
ringing the opening bell of the
$100
New
a barrel.
York Stock Exchange. Rosie Rios there apparently ringing the bell.
Got a little bit of
awesome.
green.
Not exactly sure why, but I think it's for our anniversary.
It's like
coming up
crypto's
on
doing
the 4th
all
of
right.
July. Avenue Point ringing
Bitcoin.
the bell at the NASDAQ
Bitcoin on a
market
tear.
site. They
We're gonna
have
break
had
that
a relatively
70,000.
difficult start to 2026 with the stock down 20%. 20%.
I think we just
It's
might.
a down day for a lot of stocks. And Danny Berger, what do we see in terms of the major movers?
Well, just looking at what NVIDIA does, as we do every day, just because it is the largest stock, just as a barometer of where broader markets are, and it's really not off a lot, as you pointed out, Matt. Broader markets aren't down more than 1%. NVIDIA down 0.6%. There does just seem to be a disconnect between what the experts like Ed Morris are saying and how this market is behaving. American Airlines, though, the airlines in general, that S&P industry is in a bear market, down 22% from their high last month. American falls 4.4%.
You could probably make a quick buck on that, but I'm going to be betting that within the next hour, that's going to come down a little bit.
Those shares up just only 0.4%, but it has been, Matt, the energy stocks and the defense stocks that have been one of the few sectors in the green.
All right, I'm looking at just cross-asset. You got to keep your eye on oil. I don't know how many times I checked the price.
Come on down.
In yesterday's session. As the Asian trade began, it was pretty shocking. The hedge fund dad's carpool was losing its collective mind. Right now, we're looking at just $100 and change for a barrel of Brent crude. So a gain of only 8.8%. It looks
you're
so
behind.
tame compared to what we saw last night. S&P 500 right now, the cash trade down at 66.83. The Bloomberg U.S. dollar index up another 0.1%. It's up 2% since the war started a week and 2 days ago. And that makes it obviously worse for everyone else around the world. The 10-year yield is still up, but only now 1 basis point to 4.15.
You've got some stocks flattening out.
Not the level that they had earlier on inflation fears. A trio of market heavyweights are
Silver coming up
in on the Iran war impact on stocks. Ed Yardeni says the probability.
I do not think silver is going to cross up over here. But if the dollar continues to come down, then it just might. Yeah, the dollar's down almost a full % from last week. Crude oil, it looks like it's having trouble getting below this mark. Oh shit, I'm an idiot. You might wonder why I don't have automatic, to fit it to the screen. Because every time I do, oh, well, okay. Right when I say something, it doesn't do it. But every time I've been doing that lately, it just turns it into a flat line across the screen. So that's why. But now I can keep that on and we're good. I'm up $34 on my little play. Sure would like it to come down more than $97 a barrel. That's pretty good.
A barrel. So to me, that suggests that there should have been more of a deterioration in the market, given that those scenarios are shifting. But at the same time, I think one of the reasons that you're not seeing such a big market reaction is there's still that assumption that this is going to be fairly short-lived. And we know from experience that as soon as it starts to turn around, then you could see a pretty quick correction in oil prices, with asset prices moving in conjunction the opposite direction.
It's a market that's been primed to buy the dip, Seema, and overlook any of these big existential risks. I said this just moments ago, but it truly is the thing concerning me that you listen to experts, people who are actually geopolitical analysts, saying this thing is bad.
Yesterday. This is yesterday at 6 p.m. when it ran up. I bought right here, my long, and then it banged up here, came all the way up to almost $120 a barrel. And since then, it's been kind of trashed. I should have sold out there, but I didn't. And now I have a short. Sure would have loved to call it up there, but that was before they were talking about the release of those reserves they're talking about doing now. I'm going to space this out to market opening. How about I don't? I like to see more of what's going on. We are fit to the screen. Let's see what the stock heat market's doing. Still mostly red. A little bit of flattening out. Nothing to write home about. Certainly no gains. Crypto heat map looking fan-tiddly-tastic. Bitcoin correcting a little bit from that run it just had. Let's see if it happens. Cool. For some reason now my automatic fit to screen is working. Silver making a run for it. Oh, is it going to go up above it? Is it going to break through that? It already went a little higher than it did before. It was just barely touching it. A little bit higher. Yep, denied. Still got a little bit of steam to it, though. Dollar needs to come down a little bit more. Yep. See the dollar rising? That's going to give silver a little bit of resistance. I think I can get rid of that. Let's see what... I really want to see what NVIDIA is doing. I clicked the wrong thing. Let's see what NVIDIA... The AI space has been getting a little bit of pullback lately. But NVIDIA has their hands in so much. They've literally got their hands in everything. I mean, in just their graphics cards alone, because the entire gaming industry, and then of course the crypto mining industry, they use video cards to mine Bitcoin. So those two things are what keeps NVIDIA as high as they are. You can put the AI stuff aside, in my opinion. Of course, that's only going to help it. Silver's still hanging out in the same area. My short looks like it's correcting up a little bit. That's fine. I'm going to go back to these news people and see what they're saying.
About oil markets, but
Perfect.
what the oil is used for. You can extend that maybe not even to oil, to things like fertilizer and chemicals. Seema, what are wider ramifications besides just energy markets themselves?
Right, and I've seen a number of reports just in the last 24 hours pointing out that about semiconductors being potentially impacted because, as you said, the oil is really required for the production, fertilizers as well. Now, it hasn't yet hit, but of course there are growing concerns that if this were to be a situation which continues to deteriorate, there would potentially be implications for AI capex. And I've got to say, at this point in time, that is not the situation. What actually we're starting to see is that investors are looking for, what are the parts of the market they feel safest in, and actually technology is coming back at the top of that agenda. They continue to like the AI narrative, and they know that a lot of the market has been hit. So that is actually an attractive part for the time being. But of course, if this were to continue, it's very difficult to find bits of the market which would be completely immune to this kind of shock.
Of course, the irony, Matt, was that at one point, the place that you'd hide out in all of this, like we did in COVID in Ukraine when there's an energy price shock, is software with low margins and B2B. You can't do that anymore.
No, but actually you're seeing a reversal of the rotation out of the Mag 7 stocks into infotech and communication services. So it'll be interesting to see if people look at those places for safety. Principal Asset Management Chief Global Strategist Seema Shah, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Let's get a look at what's going on in the stock market right now, Danny, because you don't see the kind of drops you may have expected with $120 oil overnight.
You really do not. It is a very constructive market. And again, what will it take for this market to wake up? Seema Shah just saying it's all about duration. But the experts are saying, Ed Morris was saying, this could last weeks, if not months. On the up column, you have some of Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, Live Nation. They just settled a suit with the DOJ, so that's helping them out. Only 50 stocks are higher on the day. The solid majority is on the downside. 453 stocks are down. The tech heavyweights dragging us down. Maybe we're starting to think about what Neil Dutta was saying, that the semiconductors are being produced in regions that are hardest hit by an energy crisis in Asia. So Apple, Nvidia, Amazon, Meta, all the worst performers in terms of points moving the...
Anybody got any picks you want me to check out? Drop them in the chat.
The foreign minister of Japan said that he repeated Japan's position that Iran must never possess nuclear weapons, and he also insisted that Iran promptly release 2 Japanese nationals. Apparently, the Iranian foreign minister provided Iran's position and promised his country's full cooperation in ensuring the safety of Japanese nationals. It's important to note, though, that while I am talking about the updates regarding operations that Iran is conducting...
Yeah. Let's see what Yahoo's saying.
5 quarters in a row of double-digit earnings growth, and while we expect some headwinds from the Middle East conflict onto consumption growth and corporate earnings. Again, at current oil prices,
looks like silver was rejected up there.
Maybe a hit to earnings growth
as
of 1
I
to 2
thought
percentage
it would.
points. So I think for most investors,
Dollar
staying in
coming
the
back
game,
up.
sticking to your strategic plan is appropriate at times like this. And if anything, if the sell-off were to amplify,
I'm
and
gonna
we
be
were to
watching
see
these
more
oil
panic,
futures like a hawk
in
today, baby.
measures of market psychology, those can be moments to kind of lean in and add to portfolio allocation. So
Yahoo's got a whole bunch of nothing to say. What's BBC saying?
In a week of Israeli strikes, Israel's massed forces along the border and repeatedly told people in southern Lebanon and the southern suburbs of Beirut to evacuate. The Lebanese government says almost 500,000 people have registered as displaced since fighting began. A drone strike on a government building in Kuwait sparked a huge fire overnight. Attacks have been reported across the Gulf.
That's war. It's like everybody's in commercial. All right. Oil futures. I've got the 1 minute chart on, which isn't really a good indicator of what's going to happen. Put the 5 minute on. Still under a short signal, which is exactly what I've got going on down here. I do believe we're going to keep on coming down. As soon as they announce that the oil reserves are being released, the international community is currently discussing it. America is on board with 200 to 300 million barrels of oil being released to help stabilize the cost of oil. If you've been paying attention, then you know that in the last few days, the price of oil has surged like 20%. If you got in on the on my alert that I gave on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, then you might have got in on time and profited a little bit off of that on the futures. As of right now, though, we're just waiting to hear about these oil reserves being released. So hopefully they will, so my short can come back and I can actually make a little bit of money, because this is like literally all the cash in the world that I've got right now. Just like my dumb ass to throw all my money I've got into something, but this was a no-brainer. Right. Looks like silver didn't like that resistance up there. Could have figured that. Nope, that's oil. Is that dollar going to pop up anymore, forcing silver down a little bit? Looks like Bitcoin's really wanting that 70,000. It's fighting hard for it. And if we expect to see a continuation of this upward trend of Bitcoin, it needs to get above 70,000. If it can't maintain 70,000 over the next couple of days, then it's going to be right back to the bear market, which we're pretty much in long term. This short term short term little bull market, you might be able to make a quick buck off of. Honestly, I sure wish it would pop up to about, I don't know, 1 million. I am a $95,000 bag holder, which is all locked up in staking pools, because it's not a loss until you sell, and I'll be damned. No, we got too big of a position. But it kind of hurts when it's locked up and I can't touch it. But that's why I did it, so I wouldn't touch it, so I wouldn't take that loss. But it's hurting me here now lately because, yeah, ouch. Drop a ticker symbol in the chat if you want me to check something out. I mean, you can pretty much expect just about everything to be red. The only thing that's doing well is the energy market. You've got a little bit of in the health and the consumer non-durables that's going up, but that is likely short term. Crypto's looking good over the last hour. Looking good for the last 24 hours. Happy Monday, everybody. Where's everybody from? Drop a comment in the chat. Tell me where you're from. Are you holding any bags, anything? Drop it in the chat. And do me a favor and hit the like button. It would really help this very teeny tiny channel out. I am currently awaiting a disability claim because I have some serious issues. And, yeah, I can't exactly work. I'm in far too much pain. So this YouTube thing, this YouTube and Rumble thing, I just recently got monetized, like January 5th, and I think since then, it's been almost 2 months. Since then, I think I've made a whopping $65. So I'm getting there. I'm still below the price point that they're willing to pay out of, so I can't even touch that money. And I just recently crossed over the 100 follower mark on Rumble. Thank you. If any of you who recently subscribed are watching, you guys put me above the threshold to be able to make some money on Rumble. I sure could use it. I wish some of these advertisers would pay better. All right, dollar seems to be screwing around a little bit, coming up slightly. I'll expand that out a little bit. I do believe these futures are going to come down a little bit more as soon as we get word on the releasing of these oil reserves. 200 or 300 million barrels of oil at stake, which will stabilize the market a little bit and bring the cost of oil down.
I will add that in the last 6 months or so, we have seen a huge acceleration in some of these advanced reactors and their ability to actually lock in fuel contracts. In other words, things are getting really serious, and now is the time to really completely close that fuel supply chain, and that is really what this announcement is about, is to study how we do this and how we collaborate together.
I'm going over to live now because they are talking about oil.
News, according to independent research firms, which spoke with the Associated Press. The threat of Iranian missile and drone attacks has all but stopped tankers carrying
Well, at least
oil
they
and
are in the
gas from
captions.
Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Iran from traveling through the strait, which is bordered in the north by Iran. Just wanted to bring all those details because we know that people are watching how a lot of this supply and demand, not just with oil, but several other goods and services.
Biggest winner of the day,
continuing to be
Electric
top of
Power
mind.
Holdings, up
And it
almost
showcases
1,000,000%.
just the wide range of the impact and just how far it stretches.
Congratulations to you if you saw that coming. These are likely heavily manipulated. Let's see what the biggest loser of the day is. Ouch. Ouch. Damn. I gotta see this. Down 99%. Super. Damn, they were almost worth a penny. What the hell kind of garbage is this? Uh-huh. Yeah, it's penny stocks. Looks like Nvidia is taking a bit of a tumble for the day. Everybody's taking a tumble. I mean, there's just no getting out of this one. I'm really hoping that this price of oil comes down in a major way. Not only for my short, but for the price of gas, as I'm sure the rest of you would like as well.
Those are breaking, and we're all working to sort of throw those out, if that makes sense.
Jake, I want to ask, just as one of the foremost minds on alternative power, what is your take on the impact $100 oil is going to have on the U.S. economy at a time when energy prices, electricity prices are already soaring?
I think we all know the answer to that question.
We see like an EV backlash pushing us back towards big inch V8s. Like, how does this affect America?
Yeah, I mean, look, everything builds off of energy, both it being available, reliable, and really, really importantly, affordable. And we've had a lot of things that have drifted from that. And
You know, when they start talking about big does in the news, that means usually they don't have anything better to talk about.
Their analysis is that no matter how many times they hit military targets, it's not going to move the Trump administration. But they feel that the president is uniquely sympathetic and he's driven by economic interests. So if they can drive the price of oil up enough, or they can cause enough economic damage, that will force him to end the war. So yeah, they're looking at Western companies, particularly companies like Halliburton.
That's an interesting take. I don't think I agree.
Saudi Arabia, and we're looking at the same thing on the cyber battlefield. We're looking.
Excuse me, I should clarify. I don't think it's going to move.
Nuclear fuel. How do efforts look with this partnership?
I want to get back to Fox Live because they were the ones talking about the potential release of millions of barrels of oil.
Fighting, escalating, tensions continuing. Also, all of those tensions are having a wide-ranging impact to countries and millions around the world. We're going to keep following all of that for you closely throughout the day, so make sure you stay here with us. In the meantime, I want to head out to some of the comments from earlier on today with the EU Parliament President. She was speaking on this conflict that continues with Iran and several other nations. On the other side of this, my colleague Stephanie Quinyu will continue the coverage.
These are all the crude oil
Without
futures.
resetting our relationship with the United Kingdom.
April,
I was
May, June, July.
in London a few weeks ago, and from our meetings with the Prime Minister.
You know, something I'd like to point out that's very interesting. The space between the excuse me, not the RSIs. The space between the values was a lot bigger earlier this morning. The fact that they're closing the gap a little bit, that could be a good thing overall.
To seize it now. It is also that spirit that needs to guide the new transatlantic relationship. We have our disagreements sometimes loudly, but the alliance will remain the backbone of our common security and trade.
Yeah.
CEO of a large U.S. company. What should I be doing right now?
Well, first of all, you're going to be wanting to sync with your CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. You're going to want to make sure that these folks are looking at what are the current cyber vulnerabilities that are out there, what are the ones that are being discussed online, among hacking, among cybersecurity groups. You're going to want to understand what groups are out there that are active doing these attacks.
Looks like Nvidia's down a little more than 0.5%.
Cyber team. You should know what these groups are and what they're doing, so you understand whether or not you're in their crosshairs. Some of these groups are actually advertising their targets ahead of time, right? So part of this is
coming
just
up a little bit,
right?
silver to come down a little
if
bit.
You look at some of the companies out there that have been
All
caught
futures
by
still just
this.
sitting there.
You know, Sam Bankman-Fried. His
And it
big
looks like
mistake was obviously
Bitcoin
stealing
came down
from the
below
company, but he also didn't
69,000.
invest a single dollar in cybersecurity.
Perhaps
Even if he
just a
had
little bit of
stolen anything, that
consolidation
company would've
before
gone
making a move up. A lot of consolidating going on. This is one of those brief pauses in the market. Things are about to start moving again.
In case you missed it on Bloomberg Deal.
Nope. Nothing much in the news. I'm pretty sure everybody's waiting, just like I am, to hear an update to this oil situation. I still believe right now is be a great time to get a short in. I mean, right here would be a perfect time to buy a short. Because, I mean, it's right on par with this line. I do believe we're going to come down a little bit more. But how much further, who knows? When I've got a short, I hope it plows down as low as it can go. But the problem with shorts is you can only ever make 100%.
sensitive targets for them are going to be the.
Well, that's Bloomberg talking about. They go to commercial more than anybody, for Christ's sake.
Mark, the small caps are taking a much larger hit. Obviously, the
Oh, yeah.
concern is that inflation either doesn't allow the Fed to cut as much as had been priced in, or even spurs rate hikes. The Dow Jones Industrial Average at 46,789. We're off 50,000 watch for now. Nvidia right now down 0.5%. We always keep that there as it's the largest company in the world, so any move matters. SanDisk, we were looking earlier at Samsung. It is actually up 2%. You've got Northrop Grumman, little change, but this is a defense stock we're watching. They have done largely well. Airlines
What did I
have done
tell you
largely
about
poorly,
Exxon?
obviously with jet fuel up right now.
Yeah.
American down 6%. Novo and Hims on a specific story. They're working together now. Novo's going to sell its drugs on Hims' website, and that helps. Coming up in the next hour, Shayna Sissel on the stagflation trade as oil rises over $100 a barrel.
Go to see what the BBC
from the Iranian
said.
regime on so many different partner countries. It's why we're providing the Typhoons, the F-35s, the jets to the region, and air defences, strengthening air defences as well. It's also why we're working immensely hard to help British citizens return home from the region despite all of the airspace and restrictions that are in place at the moment. It's that substance I think we should focus on, because that's the most important thing to the UK.
But the relationship between leaders does matter, does it not? And in fact, the government has been highlighting how good a relationship Keir Starmer has with Donald Trump for many months, telling us that only Keir Starmer has been able to get such a good deal with the Americans because he's got a personal relationship. That seems to be in trouble. Do you deny their relationship's in trouble?
Well, of course.
In case you didn't watch the last few days, my last few live streams, my red list over here, these are all companies that SpaceX. These are all companies that supply SpaceX. And they are companies I believe that we should all be watching very closely, because whenever SpaceX decides to IPO, these companies are going to have a good run up until then, and even after. Obviously, before an IPO, you can't really invest in it, right? But you can invest in the companies that supply SpaceX. And SpaceX has over 2,000 different companies that they deal with, but these are the top contenders. You've got Broadcom, ST Microelectronics, Astronics, love that name, NVIDIA, and then you've got the South Korean company Fine Bastille. Obviously, you can't invest in that in the American markets, but you can invest in them in the Korean markets. And given whatever the Korean won or Korean currency is doing, you might be able to double your, might be able to compound your profit. I have never bought any stocks from any other markets around the world, so I'm the last person that knows how to do it. I don't imagine it's very difficult, especially if you're with TradingView. TradingView is awesome. There's a link in the description if you want to get TradingView yourself. But yeah, these companies, I would watch these very closely over the next 6 months, because it's rumored that SpaceX could be about to IPO closer to about June, July, and it will be the largest IPO in world history. They're estimating that they will IPO at a valuation of $1.5 trillion. That's insane. That's nuts. And I doubt people like you and me, I don't know if you're broke like I am, I'm probably not going to be able to get in on any of that, because I forget what the price point they're targeting is. I'm pretty sure it's just speculative now anyway. So I will not speculate on what we might think the cost. You know what? I could just look that up and just tell you what I find, baby. Estimated SpaceX IPO price per share. Should the SpaceX company meet these expectations, a $1 trillion to $1.2 trillion offering could be likely, implying a price of $400 to $8,000 per SpaceX share. On the other hand, an even more favorable $1.5 trillion debut could push the pricing well above the $800 mark. I think they meant to say $400 to $800 per share, because then in the next line they say it could push the pricing well above the $800 mark. Yeah. to potentially above 1,200. So you can count on the price of SpaceX share IPOing anywhere between $400 and $1,200 per share. I don't know about you, but I am likely not going to be able to afford to get in on that. Plus, I don't really like getting in on IPOs anyway because it's way too easy to get wrecked. I remember when Coinbase IPO'd, and I think they came out at about $300-ish per share. And it wasn't anything really major to write home about. It fluctuated a bit. I think I ultimately lost a small amount of money, so it was negligible. But it's still just, You know, these are hype-based things. You want to kind of let things settle in, especially if you're trying to do any kind of long-term holding. It's great for the short term if you can call it. But, I mean, sometimes trying to time the market is, for the majority of people, for like 90% of the people out there, it's impossible to time the market, and it's a much better deal to buy and hold in an ETF. That's been historically, that's been the common wisdom, the accepted wisdom when it comes to investing. Day trading, you can make a lot of money, but the odds of you really killing it are minuscule, man, are minuscule. That's why I lost so much money in January. I lost about $50,000. That's why I'm such a broke bitch right now. Because I sold my house and then I started trading crypto instead of just letting it sit. I did let a good bit sit, but I lost about $50,000. I'm still hurting over that. Because now I am currently homeless. Technically, I'm staying in a friend of mine's house. Anyway, y'all don't care about any of that. Everything's still looking vastly red. The big players are kind of leveling off a little bit, but that's because they consistently do so well. Otherwise, I do believe they'd be sucking it too, like most of everything today. The only thing that's really moving around worthwhile, Bitcoin's doing quite well, considering. In the context of the rest of the market. I don't know if you've seen my silver prediction video, my Fibonacci silver prediction video, but yeah, if you haven't, I'll give you a little summary. Rather than tell you to go watch my video, you can still go watch it. It's a little more in depth, but basically, Fibonacci say that once silver gets above like the $100 mark or so, we can expect it to run up to about 130, 140. Okay? Once it gets up to about 130, 140, we can expect it to crash again. Like the last big crash. We're talking anywhere between 30 and 60% losses. So if you're in on silver, when it runs up to about 130-ish, get out of it. Let it crash. And once it starts recovering from that again, the next move after that, what the Fibonacci's tell us, is that silver should run up to about $200 an ounce. Now, when will this happen? Nobody knows. It's hard to tell. It could happen next month, which I highly doubt, or it could take a year. It could take 5 years. Historically, silver has been a slow mover. Granted, things have been very different lately. But as long as the dollar is doing well and close to the $100 mark, the $100, for this chart, you can forget that. As long as the dollar's performing well, and looks like over time it kind of isn't. So this long term bodes well for silver, but in the short term it definitely doesn't. Because if the dollar's going up, silver's going to stay down. They are inversely related.
War which is engulfing much of the Middle East, and here things are getting back to.
Let's see what Fox Now is talking about. I want to hear about oil.
Fragmented, a power structure there in Iran. Who really is in power currently?
Yeah, so first of all, to address what you were saying,
Running
this
up
is
over $100 a barrel.
propaganda coming from Iran right there, saying they are not going to continue attacking against the UAE, against Qatar. I heard you mention Turkey before, with Cyprus Azerbaijan, all these other countries. So whoever's pulling the strings there, and I'm sure they had a contingency plan in case their top leaders were in fact killed, and that was the case in the first few minutes of the war. Those who are calling the shots were probably the replacements of those leaders, and they're the ones who are pulling the strings. They're the ones who are deciding what policy is, and we cannot believe what they say. Just like I remember with Hamas, who's been lying for years and years when it came to the realities of what happened.
Did we get a notification somewhere that they're not releasing that oil reserves? What the hell's going on here?
But right now it's about 10 p.m., so I think I'm good for the next 2 hours.
Thanks for coming in and pulling double weight here doing the show.
Anytime. I'm glad because there's a lot to get through. And we're going to start things off with Elisa Odenheimer. She is our breaking news editor for Israel, and the latest out of the Middle East. Plenty of updates to give you there. Anna Rathbun, the CEO and founder at Grenadilla Advisory, will give us her take on the markets. It feels like there's been a regime change since I was last here in the studio, I think, to put it mildly.
But I think the question is it really different from the regime that President Trump took out?
Yes,
so
all good questions.
We'll talk about it.
Tyler Kendall, our Bloomberg Washington correspondent, will also give us an update here as NATO intercepts a second ballistic missile fired at Turkey. Bess Friedman is the CEO of Brown Harris Stevens, talking to us about the
Do we have any news about
move at the directive
oil
of Iran? What are we seeing in terms of those terrorist organizations?
Almost 10 days ago, so we're still potentially what the Trump administration said that it could last for several weeks. So it's still not basically a job completely done. What I would like to say here is that there is the risk here is one of asymmetric war. So specifically, Iran may have the ability to continuously disrupt the Strait of Hormuz via drones and via mines. If that is the case, we may be in for a long period of disruption. Not necessarily complete closure, but it's enough to severely reduce the flow of crude and natural gas, and then you have huge price spikes. Now, there are ways to redirect some of the crude, specifically from Saudi Arabia and from the UAE, but this is not enough. It's not going to be enough. Eventually, you will need for the oil markets and the energy market to completely work as
watch it come
as
down
normal.
as soon as I did.
The Strait of Hormuz needs to be completely restored. So that is the priority number one.
But as you can see, we've got a long signal.
So it's the entire world that is suffering from this situation.
I put far too much faith in these trading signals. And just so you know, anybody that's watching currently, you should know that those signals do not always apply to what we've got on screen, because there's a lot of these things you can't trade. I just can't get rid of them for one unless I get rid of them for all and like that. I just leave it there. The signals, that is. What is Yahoo saying?
Come to agreement. How urgent do they need to come to an agreement, and how much of a difference would it actually even make?
Extremely urgent. I think this would be a proper use of SPR. So the SPR were instituted back 50 years ago to address situation of severe disruption. This is definitely one, and the G7 should act as quickly as possible to have a plan in order to deploy the SPR in the next few days. Now, we don't need to see prices at 150 to actually use the SPR, but as you said, it's a limited resource. The United States, which has by far the largest SPR, it's 400 million barrels. It seems a big number, but consider that global oil demand is 100 million barrels per day. So in a situation like this, and as I said, the Strait of Hormuz is 15 million barrels per day. So consider that if the strait is closed, then you can quickly basically go through the SPR of the United States and other countries in the world relatively quickly. The US, though, is in a relatively, in comparison to other countries, in a stronger position. And the reason is that the US is no longer a net oil importer.
That's right.
That puts a
drill,
little
baby,
bit
drill.
of a buffer around the United States. More exposed are the Asian countries that are almost all of them.
Yeah, and you know what? As long as we've cut off China's main supply of cheap oil, which Strait of Hormuz being closed, their main supplier of oil is cut off. Guess who they got to buy it from? America, baby. That bodes well for us. And since everything's priced in the petrodollar, that bodes well for the dollar. So as long as that goes on, that's going to make the dollar run up. It's going to make silver come down, gold as well. And yeah, that should bring the price of oil down. So you've got these conflicting issues. Even if we release those, 400 million barrels a day, which would only really buffer the market for a few days, according to what they just said. 100 million barrels a day is what the world goes through. That's a hell of a lot. So I'm feeling like if they do release all that emergency reserves, that they've got something bigger in store for the next few days. So that would put them under pressure for going ahead and reopening the Strait of Hormuz within that time frame. So if they approve it, however many million barrels of oil is released, do the math, see how many days it would last, then that would be how many days that they are hoping to have the Strait of Hormuz open by, right? So if they release, say, 500 million barrels of oil, that's only going to get us through 5 days. So they would hope to have the Strait of Hormuz opened back up within that time period, right? That seems like some simple logic to me. I am just guessing, but it seems the logical scenario.
Bypass the Strait of Hormuz. It needs to be restored. It's too important of an artery to be bypassed. So there is no alternative.
We're totally going to take control of that area.
The impact, the east-west pipeline in Saudi Arabia definitely is one, and the SPR are other measures, but they are only temporary ones.
And you know what? I hope we do. If we do, it's going to bode quite well for us. Because, the rest of the world to go back to being priced in petrodollars. I mean, it still technically is, right? But as long as China, North Korea, and Russia are all working together to conspire against our petrodollar, which they have been doing, that was part of the reason why we invaded Venezuela. That's probably part of the reason why we went into Venezuela, because that was another cheap oil supply for China and Russia. And it gave both of those countries a good foothold in our hemisphere. So all of these things that Trump is doing that they're not reporting properly on in the news, including the way he's been eyeballing in Greenland, this is all a strategic thing to prevent China and Russia from having any sort of leverage or any sort of foot up against us. As long as we keep them slightly unstable, we stay in power and we call the shots. That's good for us as a country. Humanitarianly speaking, you can say whatever. Is it right? Is it wrong? It just is.
If we see oil prices settle at $100 a barrel. Now, is the Fed going to be concerned about that? Well, the Fed can't really do anything about higher energy prices. But the one thing that the Fed will be concerned about is if we see some degree of demand destruction. And if we listened to Claudio earlier, he mentioned even at $100 a barrel, we can reasonably expect to see some degree of demand destruction. And that could mean that we see less room in consumers' budgets.
Demand destruction. That is a term used basically for people saying, people cutting expenses and saying, nope, I'm not paying extra for gas, so I'm not going to drive as much. That's demand destruction.
Prices that consumers actually pay. Like, they talk about it more, even if their policy can't directly address it. Particularly this Powell Fed has been forced to confront that because we've been in an inflationary period.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing that I think is important to highlight, too, is the fact that gasoline prices are where consumers have seen a little bit of reprieve lately. Food prices are still elevated. Shelter prices are still high, though we're not seeing that persistent inflation there, but still elevated. Childcare costs are high. And now if we also see high gasoline prices,
Dollar's
it
doing
certainly
well.
leaves less space in consumer budgets. Now, we do get February
You
CPI.
see that jump up? You see that jump up on the dollar? Completely coinciding with the price of oil. Petrodollar, baby. And then coinciding with the decline in silver. I'm telling you, man, all three of these things are so interrelated, it's unbelievable. And then, of course, Bitcoin is making a little bit of a run out of it, too. As long as the dollar holds strong, silver will come down, oil will go up. given the current state of the world, of course. If we weren't at war, the dollar and crude oil futures wouldn't be so closely tied together. Nvidia trying to make a bit of a recovery. Broadcom doing fairly well. Like I said, they're one of the six companies that I'm watching regarding the SpaceX IPO that could be coming later this year. Crypto heat map looking a little flat for the 1 hour, but on the 4 hour still looking pretty good. That's a lot of red. But look at all these buy signals over here on the right. Everything's on sale, baby. Soon as we could declare some sort of victory in Iran, the market's going to run so hard. We're going to make such a comeback in stocks. So, you know, right now might be a great time to buy up a lot of stuff. As far as I'm concerned, it's always a good time to buy Bitcoin. Silver, we are likely never going to see $50 an ounce ever again. Ever. That is highly plausible. In fact, if we can get back to normalcy in the world, once the war is over with and all that other stuff stabilizes, pretty sure you're going to watch silver make an epic run yet again. Dollar taking a little bit of a dip. Oil following it closely. A little bit of green emerging. Crypto market vastly flat over the last hour. Let's see what Tesla's doing. I haven't looked at Tesla in a while. And you can expect Tesla and Starlink. I don't even know. Is Starlink even listed? I don't even know. I don't think they are. Tesla's pooping the bed. Coming off of that $400 a share mark. I got the 5-minute candles on. All these short signals, I'm willing to bet if I put it on a longer period, we're under a short. Yeah. Yeah, that's 1 hour. Put this on to 1 minute. See what's going on, y'all. Looks like we're setting up a little bit of a flag. A little bit of a bull flag, baby. Patterns don't really apply so much to things like oil, crude oil. Especially during a time when you got plenty of catalysts out there in the world. Let's see what Fox live now.
And we wanted to let you know that coming up at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, so in just about 10 minutes or so, we are expecting to hear from Vice President J.D. Vance as he delivers remarks to the International Association of Firefighters. We're going to be carrying that live without interruption.
I don't care.
Vice President J.D. Vance is set to deliver remarks in just
How about you deliver some remarks about the price of oil?
Meantime, we are continuing to follow all of the developments in the conflict in Iran. And earlier this morning, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer was speaking about this conflict. This comes as the...
Yeah, I swear, whenever these British leaders speak, they are so drab and monotone. They're so boring to listen to. That's why I enjoy Trump. He's such a prick. I love it.
It's all right there for you.
When can your engineering team have this rolled out?
We can have it delivered by tomorrow.
Okay, let's get the show on the road.
Cool.
Cool. What's Bloomberg saying? They look like they're on commercial.
Global leaders stay ahead.
Yep. BBC.
That
2 of its soldiers were killed in action fighting against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. That's after, of course, Hezbollah's military and personnel capability, but it's pretty clear that Hezbollah has managed to retain men and weapons, and those Israeli troops now in southern Lebanon, although Israel says it has killed at least 200 members of Hezbollah and attacked 600 targets, there is still quite a serious and significant Israeli military operation happening in the south of the country. We've been across the country over the last couple of days, down in southern Lebanon today, and what's interesting is that there are dozens of Israeli airstrikes, not just in those exclusion zones south of the Litani River, the self-imposed exclusion zone. Israel says that people, all the civilians, hundreds of thousands of people, have to leave that area. But it's clear that a lot of the strikes are happening outside the exclusion zone. We were in the almost deserted town of Nabatea today, and we saw and heard dozens of airstrikes, including one less than 400 meters from the hospital where we were filming. Now, among the casualties today in Lebanon were 2 families of 20 people, again in the south, outside the exclusion zone. And it appears from speaking to people and from reports from the scene that these were 2 families who had left the area and gone further north. But because there are hundreds of thousands of internally displaced people now in Lebanon, they were unable to find accommodation, and they'd gone back to the south, say reports, and the building in which they were staying was hit in an Israeli airstrike. It's been a similar case in northern Lebanon. We were a town called Nabishit yesterday where 40 people were killed.
All right, oil, let's come back up. Let's come back up. Why don't you people tell me what's going on?
And then American crude WTI up 10%, right at 164 cents a barrel. Talkspace shares up 7.8%. Universal Health Services said it plans to buy the behavioral healthcare platform for $5.25 a share. And let's do the best performer right now in the S&P 500. Live Nation Entertainment, those shares 6.3% higher. They've reached settlement with antitrust authorities in this lawsuit that accused the company of illegally monopolizing the live music industry. And we check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Okay, so you're all war-weary and just feeling crummy. I'm going to show you something from the lawn cam. Yes, I do have such a thing.
The lawn cam?
Lawn cam.
Aww.
The fly.
Sorry, I don't have much to say. Damn, Rumble stopped working on me for some dumbass reason. These people ain't telling me what I want to hear.
Obviously, to get ahead, to look around the corner, to work with others. And the Chancellor speaks to the Governor of the Bank of England on a daily basis.
Need to know if we're going to release those oil reserves.
Government, assessing the risks, monitoring, and talking to our international partners as well about
as
what
you
more
can
we
see,
can do together
my lawn
to reduce the likely
sucking it,
impact on people
considering
here and businesses.
This is all the money I've got to my name at the moment.
It is important to acknowledge
that is not helping me at all.
Needed, because people
was I foolish to drop every last cent that I have at the moment into this future? Probably.
The more likely the potential for an impact on our economy, impact into the lives and households of everybody and every business. And our job is to get ahead of that, to look around the corner, assess the risk, monitor the risks, and work with others in relation to that. And then the final thing I just wanted to talk to you about, and we're going to have a Q&A in a minute so I can get the benefit of your views, which will be really helpful from my point of view, is this really sad feature in many ways of a conflict like this, which is some people will try to use.
I don't think we're there right now. So in terms of slow growth, we don't really have slow growth. In the aggregate, U.S. economy is still very resilient, even if it's a...
yes. The U.S. economy is very resilient. My economy's not.
To get home, they come from all backgrounds. They come from all walks of life. And the last thing they want, or their families here want, is anybody trying to divide. Because this is a time when we need to come together as a country, stand behind our principles and our values, and not let people divide us. put a lot of reassurance work in with both the Muslim community and the Jewish community in particular, because that's where people seek to try and find a divide. But we're also setting out our social cohesion plan today, which is a broader piece of work about how we bring people together as a country, make sure that we build on what we all care about, which is very much pride in our communities, pride in who we are as a country, pride, of course, in the places that we all come from. Everybody's got a pride about where they come from. And that real sense of making sure that we do integrate and we're one country standing together, particularly at a time like this, and that we bear down on extremism and division, because it's very important all the time to do that. It's particularly important at the moment. And so that's what we're doing as we turn into this week. So I think what you'll see is the focus going more to what impact might this have back in the United Kingdom. This will be happening across all countries, really, and really to reassure you about the work the government is doing to get ahead.
All right. Terribly sorry about that. We are back. Apparently my dumbass, what do you call it, was screwing up. But I am back up. Getting about tired of this. Right when I'm trying to do stuff. Thank you for staying tuned if you are. I need a smoke after all that. Today is pissing me off.
Inflation, that is a worry.
I'm going to leave you with Bloomberg, and I shall return.
Stagflation trade. So the
Thanks
longer
for staying
end of the curve is
tuned.
going up, it's going against the
I shall
traditional
return.
narrative of safe haven. I think the gold part of it, I think it's just there's a fatigue in buying at this time, and there's a lot of uncertainty. So I think gold has, it's not like it's dropped all of a sudden, but it has been the safe haven for the last several years. So I think it's taking a pause. So a lot of the correlations that we're used to are not working. Right now, the only thing that is safe seems to be the US dollar. And frankly, if you talk about the global equity markets, US assets are also safe haven. It's losing less.
You know, when you think about when investors are going to have the appetite again for U.S. risk assets, when do you think that's going to be? Because when you think about big tech and investing in AI, you have to be in the U.S. market, do you not?
Yeah, no, I've been waiting for that. So part of the rotations that we've seen in the last month or two, I think that is, it's just kind of expected in the markets. I mean, you expect the markets to rotate, but in the end, long-term investors, like institutional investors, if they want to be in the AI space and the development, really catch it early, because we are still in the early stages, they have to come back into the US market. So at some point, we're going to get to a point where it's too cheap and investors will come back in. And that is what I'm waiting for.
Anna, really appreciate your joining us on this Monday morning. Anna Rothman is CEO and founder at Grenadilla Advisory, giving us her outlook on the financial markets. All right, let's find out what's going on when it comes to the policy making, when it comes to the conflict in the Middle East. Tyler Kendall is our Bloomberg Washington correspondent. And Tyler, one of the things that the markets and investors were looking to was this idea that G7 finance ministers would start releasing oil from emergency reserves. And that helped calm the surge in oil prices down a little bit, in that oil prices came down from their near $120 levels. They're still above $100, but things calmed down just a bit. What is the latest on that front, Tyler?
Yeah, hey, Scarlett, good morning. Well, there was a redhead on the Bloomberg terminal earlier today saying that France's finance minister said that the G7 is, quote, not there yet for a coordinated release when it comes to emergency reserves, though the G7 is willing to take the necessary steps in order to stabilize the oil market, and that they will continue to monitor the situation closely. So it hasn't been ruled out as a potential just yet. But you're exactly right. It feels like there are these attempts to try to help stabilize stave off this potential crisis here, particularly when you listen to U.S. officials that have been urging calm and really downplaying the oil spike, I think it's fair to say, right? We heard from the Energy Secretary, Christopher Wright, over the weekend saying that this will not be a long-term conflict. Other U.S. officials saying that this is a short-term disruption for a long-term gain of the U.S. achieving its policy objectives when it comes to Iran. The thing is, it doesn't feel like there is a diplomatic off-ramp really in sights at the moment, as the White House is actually threatening to widen the war. Now, we have heard from U.S. officials that there are some other options on the table. At the moment, it doesn't feel like the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is going to be an option to tap, as officials have pointed elsewhere. But we haven't really heard a lot else materialize as those oil prices trickle down to retail gasoline. Scarlett, President Trump met last week with his Energy Secretary as well as Treasury Secretary to talk about some potential solutions to help domestic consumers when it comes to this, but nothing's really emerged beyond. We heard President Trump offer that idea of risk insurance and naval escorts for those vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. I'll also say quickly, we're hearing here in Washington that potentially the White House could ask Congress for a gas tax holiday, but at this moment, that plan hasn't materialized.
And certainly for the second time in 6 days, Turkey said that it intercepted, or that NATO intercepted, a missile from Iran. What does that tell you, Tyler, in terms of possible timeline here and how widespread this war in the Middle East may go?
Well, it's interesting because Turkey had called for diplomatic efforts to help diffuse the tensions, as we've really seen multiple regional partners be hit by Iranian drones. And we heard from Iran's president actually over the weekend saying that he had instructed the military not to hit those countries that aren't preemptively striking Iran. And he actually apologized to neighboring countries. But then you're seeing still that there has been this ramp up in attacks. It's really just the latest sign of escalation in the region. And of course, we saw the regime choose its new supreme leader. And after that happened, Iran state media actually reported that the country is preparing to sustain high-intensity fighting. They have enough weapon stockpiles, they say, for the next 6 months, and that we should actually expect to see more advanced and longer-range missiles start to be deployed in the weeks ahead. So at this point, again, no diplomatic off-ramp appears to be in the sights on the table, as both sides are escalating this. I mentioned earlier that President Trump had floated that we could see the U.S. widen this war. He did post on Truth Social over the weekend saying that the U.S. was looking at expanding its list of targets beyond what we've seen, which has really been aimed at military and government sites. The U.S. has maintained that it hasn't gone after infrastructure. The U.S. Energy Secretary said that in terms of energy infrastructure over the weekend in an interview, though it is important to point out that Israel did strike multiple Iranian fuel depots over the weekend.
Also, I believe the president made some comments that suggested that boots on the ground is something that could be under consideration in a very rare instance. Can you elaborate on that?
So he was asked about this directly by reporters on Air Force One, and he said that this isn't an option that he would want to take, that he would only take it if the conditions were right, if the U.S. was able to fully control the situation where American boots were put on the ground, trying to diffuse some of those concerns that we've really heard from members of both sides of the aisle in Congress, as they've essentially have voted down their authority to help limit the president's actions when it comes to this. But they do bring up concerns about boots on the ground, and then lawmakers would want to get more involved. But Scarlett, Bloomberg News is reporting that the president is weighing a potential option to send in special forces on the ground to extract Iran's highly enriched uranium. So that's potentially one option on the table that we could see come up.
Tyler, thank you so much for that wrap-up. Tyler Kendall is our Bloomberg Washington correspondent here as we try to get our heads around the latest events coming out in this conflict in the Middle East. From New York, this is Bloomberg Intelligence on Bloomberg Radio. Coming up, we're going to speak with Bess Friedman of Brown Harris Stevens on the U.S. housing market.
Sintra, Portugal.
Ottawa, Canada.
Bangkok. Tehran.
Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Windsor Castle, England.
The Circuit de la Sarthe in Le Mans.
And this.
And this.
And this is Bloomberg.
The countdown is on.
Everything you need to get the edge at the end of the market day. Get ahead of tomorrow's trading with The Close. Weekdays on Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
Africa, a region rife with potential for growth and opportunities, but not without its challenges. Bloomberg highlights the biggest stories, interviewing key players, and reporting on the issues impacting the region. Join us as we get to the heart of African business, politics, and economics, and ask the question, what's next? I'm Jennifer Zabasaja, and this is Next Africa.
New episodes every month, only on Bloomberg.
Technology is embedded in every aspect of our lives.
And laying the foundation for the future.
From finance to defense, AI to entertainment.
And from the road to the stars. Bloomberg brings you the latest stories of the people and companies pushing the tech sector to new frontiers.
And the politics that shape global tech markets.
I'm Caroline Hyde in New York.
And I'm Ed Ludlow in San Francisco.
Watch Bloomberg Tech every weekday.
Only on Bloomberg Television.
I'm David Weston. Join me each week on Wall Street Week for stories of capitalism from business, markets, economics, tech, and climate. We go on the road for a look at what lies behind the headlines of today and what will likely be the headlines tomorrow.
We need more transparency.
Oil and gas is still important.
They said every citizen should be investing in the market.
Accelerate progress in all fields of science.
Watch Wall Street Week right here on Bloomberg. More than what you need to know, it's what you need to think about.
Good morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Welcome back to the opening trade.
Watch Bloomberg Tech.
This is the Asia trade.
This is Wall Street Week.
Welcome to Balance of Power.
This is Bloomberg Television.
It's the most fascinating time for the global economy in years, and our conversations are front and center.
We're stress testing consequential ideas, and investors around the world are scoring.
Can you hear the rhythm in the markets? Not just in the syncopations triggered by inflation, but in the preludes leading to global elections, in the dissonance that moves the Nikkei, and the rising course conducted by AI. There's music in the markets, and if you want to learn to listen for it, we'll show you how.
Tune in to Bloomberg Business Week Daily.
We got to talk crypto.
From the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead.
What's the conversation around your company?
Bringing you insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy.
Planning very big things.
A new level of premium.
Plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens.
The floodgates of innovation are going to open up.
You can't fake passion. You either are or you aren't.
Bloomberg Business Week Daily, only on Bloomberg. Why do the biggest names in business choose Bloomberg Television?
That's a great question.
It's a very good question.
Interesting question. Good question. Great question.
I so appreciate that question.
You certainly ask interesting questions.
Bloomberg Television. Top experts, great questions. Bloomberg brings you breaking news 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 3,000 journalists and analysts in more than 100 bureaus across the globe. Bloomberg Television. Context changes everything.
Asia is at the forefront of some of the world's biggest stories. And we're here where the action starts in Sydney. And in Tokyo, get ahead as the global trading day begins. The Asia Trade, weekdays only on Bloomberg.
Key investors, top executives, global innovators. Join me for in-depth conversations with the biggest newsmakers on the day's top stories.
What are these people doing?
Has been doing well. That does not tell you what the future is going to be.
We are taking a step-by-step approach, a very systematic approach with India.
This is a time to put a little more defense into your portfolio.
Insight with Haslinda Amin, only on Bloomberg.
It's the world's second largest economy with markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John.
I just pulled up Schwab live. They're not always live. I swapped them for Fox. Let me get in here and turn the volume up because it doesn't like to automatically cooperate. Let's see here.
Trading at Schwab is powered by Ameritrade, giving you even more specialized trading support. Connect with the Schwab Trade Desk, our team of passionate traders ready to tackle your trading questions, no matter how complex. Plus, get 24/7 live help and access support by phone,
you want me to
email,
look at,
and in-platform chat. Trade brilliantly with Schwab.
Mom, when my grandparents moved here, did they know what our family would become?
I don't even know if they could envision
It's
it.
like my short's
leave
doing a little better.
Behind, literally come across the entire world. I think that we totally met what their wishes were.
We've had any news regarding the oil reserves being released. I have no idea when they might vote on that or whatever they got to do to make it happen. But they need to go ahead and do it now.
Cost there. And then you have shares of biotech firms. They're climbing. This comes after Vinay Prasad, the head of the FDA's Division of Vaccines and Gene Therapies, is set to leave the agency next month. So I guess they're cheering that. We check the markets for you all day long right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Alexis and Scarlett.
Thank you so much, John Tucker.
Wow, look at all that green in the
market. You mentioned bond yields being higher, and of course that's on concerns over inflation accelerating, given what we're seeing in oil prices.
Unless my
concern over
unless my info is not correct,
conflict turning into something more entrenched, and of course with long-term bond yields, as they go, so go mortgage rates. And so I want to bring in our next guest. She is Beth Freeman, CEO at Brown Harris Stevens, to join us to talk about what's happening in the residential housing market. And Beth, I guess the
last
best
hour,
way I want
everything
to
looks
start
like it's
things
doing
off is to kind
all
of
right.
take a big step back and consider just how much international conflicts tend to affect the housing market. Yes, we know they lead to higher bond yields or they can lead to higher bond yields in this case, which could increase mortgage rates. But what does it mean in terms of demand overall for housing in the U.S.?
Bitcoin's still doing well.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me this morning. I think it's just more volatility and uncertainty. And
yep, we can figure that up ourselves. Anytime when they start talking about obvious BS, that's usually because they don't have anything better to talk about.
It's time for Inside Out, and we'll take a closer look at some of these airline stocks and bring you an example trade with morning trade line.
Yeah, these airline stocks, Asian airline stocks have been hurt. I'm not sure if that's what they were if they're talking about that, but that's what they were talking about.
Hey, investors!
Last night.
You know the market moves.
Yeah, you're in commercial. Drop a ticker symbol in the live chat, and I will be glad to pull up whatever you want me to look at.
He's been destroying and really cooking on these longer sessions and stuff, so I think he'll be ready for the marathon. Then,
Bloomberg.
And in this environment, it's sort of
even though they're talking about nothing, they're the only ones
like New York City, where you have discretionary markets. Where people are buying their second or third home. Cash is king, and we saw more than half the deals last year in New York City were done in cash. And so, I think that goes a long way, especially because money is more expensive. So if people have the cash, they're using it to buy their homes. So I haven't seen that mitigate at all. I think.
All right. Looks like 4 minutes ago. It's like 4 minutes ago, the BBC reported G7 nations to hold emergency meeting. To hold doesn't mean they have done it, yes. Or excuse me, haven't done it yet. There doesn't look to be any recent information regarding that. Oh, there we go. Come on down, baby. Give me my $20. I was up like $250 off of a $92 play, and then it started bouncing around. I made that accidental trade. I swear I clicked on short, but it processed a long. Lost $30 out of that. Every little penny counts right now. So cross your fingers that this oil situation comes down. As you can see, my unrealized, I'm up $15, And I'm only up overall $18. I was up $250. So while I called the shit out of it yesterday, it going up, there was a bit of volatility today, as you can see. And yeah, my wallet pooped the bed a little bit. It's been crazy volatile today. Look at the dollar and the oil doing exactly the same thing. Look at that. Silver doing the opposite of what the dollar does, as per usual. Looks like all of the oil futures are still at a buy, but these numbers are getting closer together. They were separated by $3 or $4 yesterday, each one. The fact that they're getting closer and closer means that the market's stabilizing a little bit, or sentiment stabilizing, I should say. We are still largely red for the day, but for the last hour, things are starting to recover. I wonder what all that's about. Haven't heard a damn thing in the news, really.
It's business. So I think ever since then, it was just like people...
Yeah, I don't care.
You know, more supply into the market. So new home sales are, you know, new builder sales are slow.
Talking about real estate. Nobody's watching that right now.
Right now. The dead man walking is American Airlines. They are really the most exposed in the group. $36 billion in debt, no hedges. You know, to me, this is an airline you really want to avoid, even in the best of times.
Time to short American Airlines.
Now is if oil stays above $100 through summer, you're looking at, you know, real potential demand destruction.
We started the show talking about the potential for the degree of short-term demand destruction, and obviously showing up in the airlines is where we first look. Some of the consumer-facing parts of this market, the cruise lines are getting punished as well.
Let's take a look at American Airlines,
I'm just wondering, I mean, what does this mean for that travel bull market that everybody had been talking about? Because, I mean, the airlines have been holding up quite well. I mean, they kick off these earnings season really just smashing it out of the park. We're filling the front of the plane. Things are better than we anticipated. I mean,
a little bit of a recovery for the day,
that's going to weigh on these folks?
That's still a pretty big ouch.
It's not.
When you're trading,
you know,
so
this is the Achilles
low,
heel of the
basically.
travel industry. It's geopolitical conflict, you know, somewhere on the planet.
And it
always comes from out of the
5%.
blue. You wake up on a Saturday morning or a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning. I've lived through 3 or 4 of these at this point, you know.
NVIDIA making a pretty decent recovery, relatively speaking. ExxonMobil doing well as usual. They are going to be just fine, I am sure. Let's take a look into some of the markets, shall we? I love TradingView. There are so many angles you can look at things from. There's so much to TradingView. Like, I bought the smallest tier subscription to TradingView a few months back, and I did that solely for the reason for having trading signals available so that I could put charts up. As if you're familiar with this channel, I used to just have Bitcoin charts running 24/7, and I wanted to provide those trading signals to those of you that were watching it. But wow, did I get more than what I bargained for. Very happy with that purchase. There is just so much to TradingView. It's mind-blowing. Natural gas looks like it's doing all right. Gas futures, of course. This is always going to be delayed from the price of crude oil, so perhaps I should rotate into gas futures because they're definitely going to go up a little bit. Well, they're still down for the day. Up pretty good for the month. Look at that for the year. Yeah, gasoline futures. It's definitely, let's check out the full chart. Yeah, this might be a good buy. See how that's related. Just look at the relation. That's airline, excuse me. Get rid of some of this crap. Perhaps they will work better together. RB1 with an exclamation point. Let's look at these compared to each other. The green line is oil futures. The regular chart here is gasoline futures. That is damn near verbatim. Duh, right? Yeah. That's gasoline futures look like they may be able to profit a little bit more. Looks like the margin's a little bit better. Bitcoin's still holding on to most of its gains. Let's go to the news, see what these morons are talking about.
It's been a falling night for a lot of the airlines. Not surprised.
Still talking about airlines. Don't need that music charging me a nickel.
4-ish and 40-ish.
Go, Connor, break him down. Break him.
All right. Nobody's talking about anything worthwhile. I am going to see if I can't get Yahoo Finance up.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence. Alexis Christophorus and Scarlett Fu here with you this hour. Paul Sweeney has the week off. We are, of course, monitoring the fallout in financial markets from the ongoing war in the Middle East. You have oil prices in particular surging today. They have come off their worst levels in that they've pared some of their advances. But you look at WTI, which is the NYMEX crude, and Brent, which is the global benchmark. And Alexis, they're well above $100.
Yeah, and we're feeling it pretty immediately at the gas pump, right? I mean, I filled up this weekend in
northeastern
Pennsylvania.
you should probably go fill up your gas tank because there's no telling what's going to happen.
Yeah. That's the cheapest I could find. National average is $3.40.
Even if they do release those reserves, it's only going to buffer the market for a week at best, because they're only talking about releasing 300 or 400 million barrels, and that's only going to get us through about 3 or 4 days, because the world uses about 100 million barrels of oil per day. So, yeah, that would only be a short-term buffer. Let's see what Yahoo's saying.
About silver, and explore what the Sprott Silver Miners and Physical Silver ETF has to offer.
Reporting this week. We got Kohl's reporting.
Silver's doing okay.
You could argue it has bigger issues than what's going on with the gasoline prices in the United States. What do you think Kohl's has to deliver here when it reports?
So Kohl's has been challenged for a number of years. It has the misfortune of being in the department store sector, and in particular being in the lower end department store sector. Now, we just talked about trading.
Kohl's, I don't care, honey.
Seeing a lot, hot money rotation. We saw this in silver a couple of weeks ago. There's a group of retail traders that are shifting their money from gold to silver to crude oil now, and so it tends to blow up the markets. I think unfortunately the futures markets have an ETF problem. Again, we've seen this in other commodities recently. We saw it in 2022 when Ukraine invaded Russia. The wheat market completely blew up, and it's because we have commodities aren't as liquid as stocks. They're not as deep of markets. I know everybody thinks crude oil is this massive market, and it is. But if you look at the futures themselves, it just can't absorb the cash inflow that comes with the hot money once a trade goes viral and the idea gets viral. So most of the chaos is happening in the front months. Now, with that said, when you get this type of an oil shock,
I put that short in because we're expecting those oil reserves to be released, and upon their release, you'll see oil drop. It'll go a fair amount below 100, which is the goal. The fact that it's above 100 is the whole reason why they're discussing releasing those reserves. And the only reason it's staying in this area and not really making any big moves because I'm betting that everybody's waiting to get that news, which is why I keep going to the news myself, because I need a little bit of cash. I've lost a fair amount of the gains that I made on the long that I bought yesterday, which that hurts. I'm offended.
Put money in ETF, like I already mentioned. On the futures side, we have the same thing. People short calls, people buying calls, and the dealers have to buy futures to hedge. So it squeezes the price higher. But usually when you see that big overnight rally, we generally retest that. So even if that was some sort of a blow off high in crude oil, we likely see that or higher. So we're talking 120, 122-ish, somewhere in there as a potential target on the upside.
And Carly, what's the spillover effect for precious metals? Because we saw the torrid run-up both gold and silver had prior to the war in Iran. And lately they've been, while not coming back in a huge way, there hasn't been that investor appetite. Is that really all about the dollar and the strength in the dollar, since these precious metals are quoted in dollars?
Well, that's the dollar.
Or is there something more going on?
Look how much it looks just like the oil futures.
I think the dollar is a big part of it. While we've all been paying attention to the energies,
like
the dollar has quietly put in a triple bottom on a weekly chart. I think it's headed to about 110. A dollar index, Bloomberg dollar index, we get up to 110
and
or
oil
a little higher,
futures
like I think it might.
Are looking
that
a lot
changes
like
the landscape
Bitcoin does to every other
literally
crypto
everything,
out there.
stocks, commodities, everything gets impacted, and it's not bullish. I'll just put it that way. But we're also seeing, if you lay up a monthly chart, and I posted this to my socials, of the S&P 500 and gold together, we can see that somewhere around the pandemic, gold started behaving like a risk asset. It actually has been very, very highly correlated with stocks. And so if
because people are losing faith in the dollar,
corrects the stock market, gold's going to come with it. In other words, most people that were buying gold, I think they assumed they were diversifying or hedging against a weak stock market. but I think in reality, we're going to see the opposite.
Yeah, it looks like they were just really investing in another way to invest in equities.
But exactly.
Yeah, because you normally wouldn't see precious metals rising along with equities, and that's what we had been seeing for a long time.
Yep. Right. Absolutely correct. And so I think it might catch a lot of people off guard. And so unfortunately, I do think the door's open for a wave of liquidation that really can get quite painful in the short run. I hope
it sure can. Hopefully I'm not one of them. Everything's down. Even volatility. That's weird. Well, guys, we're just waiting on somebody to announce that these oil reserves are going to be released. And once that happens, you're going to watch the price of crude oil take a plunge. It'll probably go to the low 90s, mid to low 90s. So, as you can see that I've done down here, full transparency, I've got a short waiting on these people to announce what they're going to do. But like I said, that's going to be short-lived. You're only going to see any reserves that are released only buffer the market for a few days.
Concern about rising prices spooking investors.
What does renewables investment look like in the U.S.?
More tariff talk.
Yahoo. What is Schwab saying?
For Bitcoin, we are trading higher on the day. We up cent and a half right now, but below that 70,000 mark we were able to get across last week. We're at 69,375.
It needs to go above 70.
I do want to bring in our first guest, though. Welcome back, a familiar face to the show.
If Bitcoin's going to hang on to it, it needs to go up above 70 and stay there for a couple days. I hope I share that you got married and now have a new wife. It's back with some new hardware. We're thrilled to have you back. But let's talk about Live Nation this morning. They've settled this DOJ lawsuit, sort of very stunning
seemingly settled it right in the middle of the actual case itself. It's still being reported, lots of sources cited here, but walk us through what we know and what.
If anybody's got a ticker symbol you want me to check out, drop it in the chat. I'll be glad to.
A lot of things being reported, notably from Politico is sort of the primary source for a lot of this. But as you mentioned, less than a week after testimony began, a settlement reached between reporting suggesting a settlement's been reached between Live Nation and the DOJ. Now, financial terms, something around $200 million in damages to the participating states, which I believe is somewhere around 40 states for that. But that's not it. There's a ton of things that are going to change, perhaps, again, being reported by Politico in response to this settlement. One of them, a opening up of the technology. Platform must be opened up in part to some of its competitors. So names like SeatGeek.
I think it is hilarious that as the world is waiting for the announcement of whether or not we're going to have these oil reserves released, the whole reason they're talking about it is because it's over $100 a barrel. And as we're sitting here waiting for the announcement, it is sitting right at $100 a barrel. And this will largely affect their decision. And the other way around is true as well. Their decision is going to largely affect this. So, yeah, it's anybody's game at this moment. In the short term, I think we've got a good potential for a short. In the long term, we've got an excellent potential for a long. Unless the war ends in the next week, which I doubt. Any kind of reserves they release is only going to buffer the market for a week at best. At best. I want to go over to Yahoo.
Both of them are sort of Trump administration-induced shocks that, if they didn't come out of nowhere, they weren't entirely expected, certainly in the magnitude that we have seen.
They'd been discounted in the run-up, let's say.
Right. But with the case with Liberation Day, the shock was day one. Mm-hmm. Like, shock and awe, the market tumbles, and then sort of comes back as, you know, A, the tariffs are eased off on, and B, the market and companies come to grips with it. This is a little bit the opposite of that.
What do you guys think about Trump's tariffs and the situation surrounding them?
Before, they weren't quite ready, as you say, to grapple with what does it mean for my portfolio, but now they're being forced to do so as time goes on. So it's sort of a little bit backwards of what we saw then. And, you know, what is it?
You know, they've been talking about refunds with the... Do you think those major corporations are going to show that and reflect that in any of their prices? Maybe a little bit, but they're not going to lose money. Things rarely ever go down, am I right? Cost of things in the store for regular old goods and stuff very rarely ever come down from where they go when they rise up, because companies are not going to take losses. They refuse to take losses. They'll profit all day, put that money in their pocket. I don't give a damn about you. You're a resource. You are the product.
I think it might be, is it Colorado? No, he's in Vail. He's in Vail.
It's a nice life.
Yeah, whatever it is, we're jealous. And
yeah, I'm not jealous.
I think I got that exactly right for those keeping track at home. And so now you're in this environment where, sure, you know, as JP Morgan was out this morning saying, look, we still think that it's going to be weeks or days rather than months or quarters in terms of the length of this conflict. We still think that you need to be ready as a portfolio manager to step in and buy forcefully. Now they caveat that by saying there's likely a little more pain. There needs to be a little more weakness in the market before you're looking at an eventual bottom. But it's not really hitting this morning to say, like, don't worry about it. All the historical parallels are you know,
we've got a fair amount of green for the last hour.
You need to,
as an
investor in this environment, you need to start looking
Hopefully
at,
you bought that dip and you can make a little bit of a trade.
$90 oil on average
if
over
you're
the
a day
next 9
trader.
months. I know we didn't feel like we needed to do it last Wednesday, but maybe let's take
Dollar
the next
coming
24
down.
hours, model that out, and start to have a thought about
And of
what
course,
that
silver going up
fundamental
because of it.
challenge could be, and how the market might reprice certain areas,
Nvidia,
you know, certain sectors,
making a good
styles,
recovery.
companies, et cetera.
Well, and
Again, if you're
Obviously,
just
it's
now
not just
joining us,
printed from
this
the US, it's
chart
printed globally. I mean, Goldman Sachs, their economists, were out with a note
is
saying
gasoline futures.
if oil prices temporarily
green
rise
line
to $100 a barrel,
is oil futures.
Global headline inflation could
Look
rise
how
by
closely related they
0.7
are.
percentage point.
Duh.
Global growth could slow by 0.4
And that is oil
percentage
futures.
point.
I don't know if you guys can
Obviously, to
even
your point, that's
read
gonna play
what's
out
that,
differently sectors in different
what's up
countries,
here.
whatever. But
I don't know if you can read any of
it
that.
is going to have an effect, whatever that effect
Unless
may
you're on a
be.
big
And you could
screen,
just shrug
I
it off
doubt
and
you
say,
can.
well, I'm just going to own the S&P and count on things going higher eventually. But you better be ready to have some pain in the medium term if that's the bet that you're making.
That's what.
Yeah, I think a lot is riding on oil right now, man. It's about the only place you can go to hedge your bets. Because, if you're invested at all in anything in the market, this green right here ain't doing nothing for you, considering the losses of the last week. That's the day. That's the 4 hour. Oh, that's the 1 hour. So this green right here probably isn't helping you very much unless you bought the dip, which I hope plenty of you did. I hope everybody makes a lot of money. Especially myself. We are below $100 a barrel. Did we get some news worthwhile about these reserves being released?
It's a divestiture. That would be divesting large amphitheaters that
investment community. And now you have this layered on top.
Yeah.
And so it's become even more challenging.
Yep. They're all talking about a bunch of BS.
Through the logistics war component here.
Absolutely. So there are several, of course, the conflict itself, drives this. But, beyond that, it is a logistics issue. The reason that all these ships are caught inside of the Strait of Hormuz and can't go past right now isn't just because of the hot, military consequences here. It's because all the reinsurers, the primary reinsurers of these vessels, have completely pulled out because they just can't take the mathematical
insurance
risk.
companies don't
And
have
so,
nothing to do with any of this.
We saw, what the U.S. has tried to do here. Trump has said, hey, we'll see that the Navy can, essentially chauffeur some of these vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. They said, okay, well, we'll look at, being an insurer ourselves with $20 billion up on that. But it's just not enough, and it's not happening yet. And so until we can get
These
those
things take
insurers
time.
back into the marketplace, my concern is that that bottleneck is going to persist.
Yep.
And Ted, as we're still dealing with these geopolitical shocks and keeping our eyes on these oil prices and the uncertainty around this conflict in Iran, we also got some very important data last week. Unemployment up to 4.4%. We had that surprising loss of jobs in the month of February. Some noise in the report, but even with the noise, still would have been a surprising loss here. As you look at that data, how should investors interpret that, particularly with the uncertain background that we have behind it right now?
Yeah, I am stressed.
When it comes to the jobs data, the consumer is getting it on both sides. We're worried about inflation again. And now, hey, we saw some highlights in January on the jobs side.
I am stressed because if you look down here at the bottom of the screen, if you can see it all, I've got $169 invested in oil futures in a short. I'm up $30, which is good, but I was up $200. And this is all the money I have in the world right now because of many circumstances I've mentioned before. I'm not going to harp on about it because I don't think you guys care. It doesn't, but yeah, I really need oil to come down a little bit. Give me this $100 P&L and I'll be happy for the day. I never have these big gains like this when I throw thousands of dollars or something. I throw thousands of dollars at anything and I typically lose. But it's always when I throw a little bit of money at something, I'll double it. Well, I can't double 10 or 20 grand when I throw at it, when I have it. I had it a couple of months ago, lost 50 grand. That's how it goes, right? Hindsight. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, That's how it goes. All right. What's Schwab's talking about? Same thing. Let's See what Bloomberg saying.
What about Ticketmaster's competitors?
Ticketmaster, give it a shit.
50% off your stock price right off the top, and then we'll figure out later what the problem is. Those trades reversing, to your point, those trades reversing last week suggests there's a positioning, a conviction problem as much as there is a fundamental one, though, of course, pretty much no oil moving through a place where 20% of the world's oil tends to move through is a pending problem, let's say.
Well,
although I think our next guest is going to make us a major pitch about why it's actually the biggest important thing right now, and we all need to care.
Well,
does anybody have any stock picks?
As you have pointed out too, like the fact that we're all talking about oil and not talking about other stuff.
Big win for the other stuff.
Maybe is a win for the other stuff, namely private credit, which is linked to the software.
Should I cash out this up? It's up $35, $34?
Because private credit has been so exposed to AI and the software
It seems
trade.
like the low of the
I mean,
day.
It's not that we were ignoring
If it
it
comes
last
back
week.
down to this, that'll be another 15, 20 bucks.
Withdrawals from some of these private credit funds. There was more stuff happening, but oil has just kind of like blown almost everything
I've
else
currently
away.
got about 10x leverage.
I mean, it's you can only have so many things that dominate the headlines. Seriously, in an industry where the headlines can come from kind of any.
If you are unfamiliar with how leverage works, then you probably understand leverage to be dangerous. And it is. But let's take, for example, let's say you have $1,000 that you want to trade something with, and you want to use 100x leverage. All right? That effectively makes that $1,000 way of $100,000, as if you had $100,000 invested. Okay? However, being that your investment of $1,000 is only 1% of that $100,000 leveraged position, then if what you're investing in moves down 1%, you get liquidated. That's the formula. That formula right there will save you. However, if you were to, say, have $5,000 in the same account, uninvested to act as a liquidity pool, then you increase your risk by 5 times. You follow me? Which means you could stand to drop 5-6% without being liquidated. That's, of course, if you're trading on a legitimate platform and not like crypto.com where they have set margins. And no, I got ripped off big time from crypto.com. Don't use them. I got ripped off twice, and I called them out on it once and proved my case and got my money back from them, but not this last time. I was subscribed to their plus tier thing, and basically what it said was that you had no trading fees for the first $20,000 you trade with. Well, as soon as I crossed over the $10,000 mark, they started charging me fees again. So I contacted support, and for the last almost 3 months now, my case is still pending. They're still researching my account. Yeah, BS. They're just stringing you along, hoping that you'll give up. So I did give up. I'm done with crypto.com. But yeah, that cost me, because I was trading a lot. That was right after I sold my house. So I was trading a lot. So they technically owe me about $3,000 or $4,000 in fees, because I was making a lot of trades. I did pretty good the first few weeks, but then when crypto took a plunge in late December-ish, yep, I lost a lot. A lot. It still hurts. That's the reason why I am currently technically homeless. Because I was supposed to move to Thailand. That's been my plan. And I had some time to kill because I have to get my cat ready to go with me, take my cat overseas. So I decided to invest heavily and trade heavily and lost heavily. Silver making a little bit of a recovery. I do believe that's going to be short-lived because, I don't know, the dollar's stepping down, as is oil. Come on, step down a lot. A lot of green for the last hour. This is good, guys. This is really good. I do believe that is probably because people are buying the dip.
Whether it's votes in the UN or trade relations or, contributing to efforts that you want us to participate in, like the Board of Peace in Gaza, whatever it is, Iran is thinking, This will cause other countries to get engaged on the side of forcing the U.S. to stop this war because it's so threatening and damaging to their own economies, much less the U.S. economy. You've watched China, though, kind of carve out something for themselves.
Crypto looking flat for the last hour.
Iran and say,
still
we will
up, I'm betting. Yep.
Not oppose you, for instance, in the UN Security Council if you let our ships kind of sneak through. And we expect continued conversations like that. But that sure is a lot of leverage. It's been interesting that we haven't watched the Houthis, who have up until now in the recent years been the purveyors of warfare through the Strait. They haven't really been involved. It's truly been Iranian activity solely.
What's the number one thing you will be watching for over the next 24 hours, Kirsten?
I had originally intended
we'll be watching,
to get lost.
Definitely be watching this information on whether Russia is involved in the
do,
targeting.
But
we'll be watching whether or not
I'm going to be glued to my trade.
Supreme leader named in Iran can survive.
Might as well stay on.
And watching whether, as a supreme leader, he now feels it's imperative to make public statements. He's never made a public statement. He's never done an interview. The people really have never seen him.
This trading, it's got me stressed. I may be about to go here soon anyway, though, because I drank a lot of coffee earlier. You know what I mean? The Super Bowl is calling me. About to take the Browns to the Super Bowl. Dollar making a little bit of a recovery. Silver taking a hit because of it. Oil still slowly coming down. I really wish we would get some kind of news on what they plan on doing with these oil reserves. And you know they're probably going to do it. But I don't know. The fact that it's down below $100, the whole reason they were going to release those reserves was because it was over 100. I do believe this short term is on the super short term, probably good. On the farther out short term, probably not.
Crude oil goes up 10%, diesel or gasoline goes up 12%. Diesel is also crucial because it's the backbone of pretty much all of the transport around this country on the industrial side. Any of the big 18-wheelers going by are running on diesel. If diesel prices go up, all those margins tighten, and that makes a much worse situation for a lot of global shipping.
I mean, it's interesting, like we keep talking about gasoline prices here in the U.S. There we've got the national average gas prices, which have already started to go up.
Yep.
Of course, we don't get our oil that gets turned into gasoline here. It doesn't go through the Strait of Hormuz, right? It's from here, but we're affected by global oil prices.
Yeah. The caveat is that everything's global.
Of course, because we sell some.
It's a global price,
and we buy some.
We also export most of the oil that comes out of the ground here, and then import a lot of what we're going to end up turning into gasoline.
Oh, God.
I just said we buy and sell. What did he say? We import and export. Yeah. Let's see what Schwab's saying.
294, the heaviest volume area of all. That's the real standout area from this perspective.
It's like the oil futures coming down a little
now,
more.
Look at TSMC, they are trading
on,
at
baby.
336.81, just down slightly today, but on a down
Come
day
on, I need
in
smokes.
the markets.
Shit.
Let's move to your second pick here, Scott. You've got the Spider Gold ETF here, ticker GLD. Take us through this one.
Rinse, repeat. It's really the same explanation is what I'm seeing in Taiwan Semi. So because of the just inflated implied volatility option premium, I want to sell another Iron Condor that expires this week. This also has a bullish tilt to it. So I'm selling this week's 465, 460 put spread. On the upside,
sorry, I'm blatting out your speakers. So maybe,
485
I don't know if I am or not, but
this one I collect $3. So the ultimate risk on this, if GLD made a big blowout move one direction or the other, is only $2. So again, a lot of option premium here, a big.
Come on, I go up another $7. I'm probably going to cash out
so
just
potential
because.
for a big credit here, but as we look at the technical setup, Rick, what's it showing us about where we might see
Keep
some
it coming
movement?
down, baby.
Well, the picture's a little bit.
Did we get some news somewhere about the price, about the release of those? Come on, come on.
Nowhere to give the oil off. I've got to stop producing, or else that storage you can't keep filling what's already full. And so you're starting to see these major companies. The big news this morning: Saudi Aramco announcing shut-ins.
See me, I'm
Iraq
praying.
has now cut
I'm
60% of its global production.
Give me my cash.
Excuse me, national production.
Come on, oil.
Kuwait has cut production.
UAE cut production.
Yes, UAE cut production. And the
cash.
problem is that this is not a flip the switch, it's right back on. You have to, this is a process that takes hours to days to weeks. If these shut-ins last for a long time, that could be months to get these refineries rerunning. And so that's going to create even more tightness in a market that's already tight.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so we're basically looking at a situation where right now,
think I need
in
to
the
cash
very,
out.
very short term, there's too much oil supply because
Anybody
you
got
can't
any
move
objections?
it. But what we're pricing in is a scenario in the future.
Yeah,
when there's
I
not
mean,
enough
we're
oil
almost
supply.
to a
And I
point that
guess
we
it's-
were
I was
last
thinking about
night, right before the markets
the-
opened. Futures markets opened at $92 and change and ran up overall throughout the night. It ran up to almost $120, which is insane. But it's at 95 now. It was at 92 last night. Yeah, I don't think it's going to go much further down than that. I'm out. Cashing out. Now, should I go long? Honestly, I think I should. But I'm not going to. Maybe I should. I just never learn, man. I just never learn. It's not technically gambling, right? No, I don't have a gambling problem. I got a cash problem. Oh, Christ, what am I doing? Am I going to go long? I really shouldn't. Maybe I should listen to what these people are saying, if they're saying anything worthwhile.
Now at 95.66, up by 5.3%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever.
Destructive, and both sides know that if they strike first, the other side is going to come back triply as strong. Now that energy infrastructure is being struck, everything I'm hearing from everybody I talk to is that the lid is kind of off. All bets are off. This is only going to get worse because you've now got these countries that depend on energy revenue getting their energy revenue targeted, and that's going to ripple out. And it's going to be, as you say, months to years to get all that repaired. Bahrain this morning or late last night declaring force majeure on its only refinery. That's going to have huge implications
I
for
bought
Bahrain,
along.
Kuwait the same way.
The price for
you see
the
in Oman,
futures are just
the
jumped
force
up
majeure
major.
on the LNG,
They're twice as much as they were last
distribution
night.
Terminal. Again, months to years to get that back.
It was $92 a contract last night. It's $180 a contract now. Whereas I could have bought two. Hey, look at that. I'm already up $3. Come on, baby, push. Why don't we run up to about right here, maybe right here, give us a nice pretty line that way, and then we'll sell out of that and short it again. That's the name of the game. High risk, high reward. And don't ever cash out unless you're up at least $5 or $10. Because they make the fees with this trading very confusing. It varies for every different kind of contract that you buy. When I was trading silver, when I first started trading silver, yeah, there was a lot of the fees I was unaware of, and the fees ate me up. And with perpetuals, these are futures. With perpetuals, you get taxed more for holding them longer. And of course, they're perpetual. They don't expire like futures do. Expiration being, as you can see down here, March 19th. That's the expiration. And if you hold it beyond that date, you'll pay a fee for the rollover. And then, of course, usually when it rolls over, as you can see right here, the next rollover is May. This April futures is the same thing as my March, as you can see by the price. Well, the price isn't on here for some dumbass reason. Anyway, as you see these numbers closing closer together, and as you watch the rest of the month play out, the price will come closer and closer and closer and closer together. However, it's going to be down the further out you get because people don't expect this war to last as long. If we expected oil to have a protracted increase over time, then you would see these numbers going up as the time goes out. So if you were to have to roll over, if you had a long and you had to roll over into a market that is thinking it's going to go out or it's not going to continue, it's not going to last, your long will probably suffer in fees for a rollover. So always try and get out by the expiration date if you can, if that's the case. If it's expected to go up, well, then, inversely the same thing applies. If you're shorting, that rollover is going to cost you. Looks like I'm up a whole 30 cents. Woo! Let's see what the world is saying. Is everybody on commercial?
Circumstances, again, volatility is very uncomfortable, but if you look at the S&P 500 since 1980, we have actually seen on average an intra-year drop of 14%. So every year, not every year, but on average, you see a 14% drop in the index. And yet we all know in most years, the market ends higher. There are concerns along those ways that cause those intra-year drops. And if you actually look over that same time horizon since 1980, the S&P 500 has annualized a 12% return every year. And cumulatively, that's more than an 18,000% gain. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds crazy, 18,000%. But those are actually the numbers.
No, that sounds fun.
But Sarah, what about people who don't have that longer time horizon? Somebody who needs to dip into the retirement funds now or maybe to send a kid to college or pay for the last year of college, whatever the case.
Let's see what Schwab is saying.
Tricks to help navigate Schwab.com, Thinkorswim, and mobile-based platforms. Best of all, you can ask questions by chatting directly with an education coach. It's interactive learning.
An education coach. An instructor, you mean? Education coach. No, it's not shell shock, it's PTSD. All this buffering of language that's happening in the world drives me crazy. Every time you turn around, there's some new term for the same shit we've been talking about. And then there's always some jerk getting mad about somebody using the old terms. Shut up.
If you're someone who does not have a long time horizon, consider the fact that you've had a great run.
Well, if nobody else has anything for me,
balance your portfolio. Take some
I do
profits.
believe
have
I'm
enough
going
cash on hand
to
for those
call
expenses that are coming over the next, year.
I appreciate
to 3 years,
everybody coming today. Drop a like if you haven't already. It would really help me out. This is a very small channel. I'm just getting off the ground, as you can see by my subscriber. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button too if you wouldn't mind. And I will see y'all again tomorrow. I hope everybody made a lot of money, unlike me. And stay tuned. Peace, love, and hair grease.